Chapter 1250. The Blood Soul Tranquility Curse. The word tranquility sounded like it came from freedom, but the word blood soul in front spoke of the bloodlust and ferocity of the curse. This great blood soul curse was an improved version of the immemorial demonic Tao technique. It was a curse that rose up in the ancient era. After a short period of amazement, it gradually disappeared in the long river of history. Now, after so many years, it had finally reappeared in the world. And this time, the caster was the temple master of the number one holy land in the divine land. And the target of his curse was his own ancestor, who was also the temple master of this holy land in the ancient era. The dark red light flowed from Yin Nanlai's body to Yin Xinghe's body, causing Yin Xinghe's body to violently tremble. The red light did not cause any harm to Yin Xinghe, but seemed to have triggered a shocking change within his body. A kind of spontaneous damage was brewing within Yin Xinghe's body, gradually taking shape, and was about to burst out. At this moment, the body formed by his primordial spirit suddenly shone with light, and the light became brighter and brighter. Around the netherworld altar, Taoist Blood River seemed to be unconcerned, his face expressionless and indifferent. As for King Yama, Emo, Shilal, and the others, their gazes were filled with worry as they looked above the altar. Taoist Yuming, who was holding the Book of Life and Death, turned to look at Yin Xinghe, whose eyes were filled with worry. Wen Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Gu Jun, Liang Pan, and the others saw this. They were at their most nervous state. Although the Blood Soul Tranquility Curse had long been sealed in history, and today was the first time it had reappeared since the ancient era, most of the people present knew about the records of this technique. At this moment, the Blood Soul Tranquility Curse had already begun to take effect. When the light on Yin Xinghe's body reached its peak, his body would shatter like Yin Nanlai. Even if he did not die on the spot, he would definitely be heavily injured, and it would be difficult to move the Haotian mirror in the Xianxi. Gu Jun activated the Longevity Lotus Throne, and Liang Pan activated the Grand Imperial Palace. Both of them were waiting for an opportunity to attack, and if they retreated, they would immediately escape. Now that the ritual of the King of the Underworld had completely failed, the King of the Underworld was enraged and humiliated. Together with Taoist Blood River and the Book of Life and Death, they were undoubtedly a huge threat to the people of the Divine Land. Gu Jun, Liang Pan, and the others were secretly on guard against the King of the Underworld's enraged counterattack. However, the doubts in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. That was because on the Netherworld altar, the King of the Underworld's expression did not change in the slightest when his plan was about to fail. He remained calm. He held onto the long banner and opened up the Black Sea domain, helping Yin Xinghe to send his spiritual will into the Black Sea. The King of the Underworld looked at Yin Xinghe, whose body was gradually glowing with light. His gaze moved, following the line of blood between Yin Xinghe's eyebrows, all the way to the void. He looked past the layers of void and saw Yin Nanlai, who was gradually disintegrating and turning into a bloody mist. Fearless in the face of death, resolute and resolute. Not bad, not bad. You have some redeeming qualities. The young-looking King of the Underworld nodded his head like an old man. I commend your courage, but I also marvel at your stupidity. You are the same as Yin Xinghe. Both of you like to take things for granted. Can this also be considered a bloodline inheritance? As he spoke, the King of the Underworld's feet flashed and a black vortex appeared. His entire body, from his knees down, was submerged in the black vortex, as though he was immersed in it. However, you still caused some trouble for me, forcing me to make a choice. Therefore, I still have to commend you. To be able to become the temple master of the Taishu Temple, you are indeed extraordinary. The King of the Underworld said indifferently. Then his body rose from the black vortex, and both his legs, below his knees, left the black vortex. The King of the Underworld held the long banner in one hand and pointed at Yin Xinghe's evil soul with the other. Yin Xinghe's evil soul slowly rose from the netherworld sacrificial altar and a black vortex appeared beneath his feet. Yin Xinghe's evil soul slowly descended, and both his legs entered the black vortex. Then his body continued to sink until his entire body was completely submerged in the black vortex. The black vortex, which was originally spinning rapidly, suddenly stopped and then started spinning in the opposite direction. The bloodline in the void was still passing through the black vortex and connecting with Yin Xinghe's forehead. However, the glow on the surface of Yin Xinghe's body had dimmed and disappeared. The turbulence that was brewing in his body had also calmed down. Within the black vortex, Yin Xinghe's evil soul was still changing its hand seals. Streams of divine sense were sent out, and they were sent into the mysterious sea through the long banner in the king of the underworld's hand. Witnessing this scene, Gu Jun and Liang Pan's hearts sank. Although they were unable to see through the black vortex, the king of the underworld's expression was still calm. He was confident and did not seem to be bluffing. However, Yin Xinghe's evil soul was still able to use the ritual. This also confirmed their suspicions. The king of the underworld really had a way to deal with the blood soul calming curse. Looking at the black vortex, Gu Jun, who had understood what had happened in the mysterious sea from Lin Feng, understood. That is the ritual that the king of the underworld uses to recover his cultivation. Now, in order to stop the blood soul calming curse from killing Yin Xinghe's evil soul, he has transferred it to Yin Xinghe. Although the king of the underworld wanted to recover his cultivation as soon as possible, with the current situation, the Hao Yin mirror was undoubtedly more important. If he could obtain the Hao Yin mirror, then to the king of the underworld, other than his own life, any price he paid would only be a gain. On the other end of the blood thread, Yin Nanlai's primordial spirit had already dissipated. It gradually disintegrated and turned into a mist of light. To use the blood soul calming curse, he had to sacrifice his own blood essence. He could not use any tricks to save his life. Furthermore, the person he wanted to kill was Yin Xinghe, whose cultivation was higher than his. From the moment the ritual was activated, he was already destined to die. Yin Xinghe's remaining consciousness passed through the void through the blood soul calming curse. Looking at Yin Xinghe's evil soul that was gradually enveloping the black vortex, he felt neither joy nor sorrow. In the end, the king of the underworld was still more skilled. Yin Nanlai had failed on the verge of success. He could only watch as the king of the underworld controlled Yin Xinghe's evil soul to further shake the Hao Yin mirror in the Xianxi. At this moment, Yin Nanlai seemed to be able to see the king of the underworld's long banner in the Xianxi domain. The flickering golden Xianxi's seawater rippled more violently. As for Yin Nanlai's great void seal, although it was on the verge of shattering, it still transmitted some information. However, it was not good news. Through the great void seal, Yin Nanlai could feel that the Hao Yin mirror was becoming more and more unstable. It was slowly slipping out of control. As for the Hao Yin mirror, Dao Lord Taiwan and the others, they were under more and more pressure from the Xianxi and the Dragon Clan experts. The defensive line, which was already unable to bear the pressure and was constantly collapsing, was now showing signs of completely collapsing. It was as though it would be broken in the next moment. Waves after waves of dragon roars resounded in the Xianxi. On the netherworld altar, the king of the underworld revealed a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. This scene gradually froze, becoming the last scene in Yin Nanlai's mind. The next moment, his primordial spirit completely collapsed. It did not leave behind any words, nor did it leave behind any aura. Just like that, it gradually dissipated between heaven and earth. It was as though there was only a long, silent sigh echoing in the void. In this battle, the current temple master of the Taishu Temple, Yin Nanlai, had fallen. Around the netherworld altar, other than Taoist Blood River, who was still expressionless, Emo, Shilaw, and the others all revealed smiles. There were even people who laughed out loud. Even Taoist Yuming, who was holding the Book of Life and Death beside the king of the underworld, also revealed a smile on his pale face. On the other hand, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfeng, Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, Liang Pan, and the rest all had solemn expressions. Yin Namlai's sacrifice couldn't be said to be meaningless, but at least it wasn't of much help to the current situation. Even though the king of the underworld had temporarily given up on the ritual to recover his cultivation, it didn't affect him from continuing with his plan, which was to seize the Haotian mirror through Yin Xinghe's evil soul. In the defensive line formed by Taoist Blood River, Taoist Yu Ming, and the Book of Life and Death was still hard to break. Through the realm passage opened by the long banner, the waves in the Xian Sea became more and more turbulent. Everyone could feel that the dragon race was controlling the Xian Sea to attack more and more fiercely, and the situation of the Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror was getting worse and worse. They probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. And at this moment, in the faraway White Cloud Mountain, Dao Master Xian, Yi, Kuang Heng, Lin Daohan, and the rest, who were fighting with the strong practitioners of the Yudu race in the void, felt their hearts tremble. Dao Master Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, Dao Master Qing Ning, and Fu Yinkong all sighed softly, while sorrow flashed past Lin Daohan's calm eyes. In the middle of White Cloud Mountain, a broken rune suddenly appeared. It was the Great Void inscription. The inscription returning to White Cloud Mountain could only mean one thing. Yin Nanlai had fallen, but Dao Master Xian, he could still feel that the Haotian mirror in the Xian Sea was becoming more and more unstable. It was still being affected by the king of the underworld and Yin Xinghe's evil soul. He knew that even though Yin Nanlai had fallen, he still hadn't been able to destroy the king of the underworld's plan. Everything was developing towards the worst possible outcome. In the Xian Sea, the line of defense between Dao Master Tai and the rest and the Haotian Mirror was about to completely collapse. At this moment, Taishu Temple couldn't spare any more people to stop the king of the underworld. Not to mention stopping the king of the underworld. Even they themselves were in a dangerous situation. The Supreme Void Yin-Yang formation was fighting against Jing Yin Yudu and another strong practitioner of Yudu who was at the beginning of the tribulation. The formation was already on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, Dao Master Xian, he was facing Qing Wan Yudu and was already heavily injured. He could only barely hold on, and danger surrounded him. However, the expressions of Qing Wan Yudu, Jing Yin Yudu, and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu suddenly changed slightly. Zhan Ming, Ning Feng, and Wan Long are in danger. Other than the master of Xianmin Tianzong has many experts. Don't worry about Taishu Temple for now. Go and save Zhan Ming, Ning Feng, and Wan Long first, and deal with the people of Xianmin Tianzong. Fantasy Sun Yudu's voice suddenly rang out. In the current situation, Xianmin Tianzong is our greatest enemy. After dealing with them, we'll go back and deal with the remnants of Taishu Temple. With their current situation, even if they rebuild the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, it'll still be easy to break through. The group of Yudu demons acknowledged in unison, and under the lead of Qing Wan Yudu and Jing Yin Yu, they gradually escaped into the distance. They had the absolute advantage, so if they wanted to retreat, Dao, Master Xian, Yi, and the rest couldn't do anything. Kuang Heng and the rest were guarding the Supreme Void Yin-Yang Great Formation, so they couldn't leave White Cloud Mountain. If Dao, Master Xian, Yi, and Taishu Temple chased after them alone, it would be the same as sending them to their deaths. Even though the strong practitioners of Yudu were moving towards Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and Zhanming Yudu, they were also constantly staring at White Cloud Mountain. If Dao Master Xian intended to rush to the battlefield where the king of the underworld was, he would immediately be intercepted by the great demons of Yudu the moment he left White Cloud Mountain. On the battlefield of White Cloud Mountain, only Fantasy Sun Yudu and Lin Feng were still in a stalemate. Fantasy Sun Yudu's body was also gradually shifting away from White Cloud Mountain, but that overflowing power was still tightly locking onto Lin Feng. Destructive attacks continued to attack Lin Feng. Lin Feng, who was shrouded by jade-colored auspicious clouds around Jade Capital Mountain, had the light in his eyes grow brighter and colder. Chapter 1251. The great demons of Yudu, including Sun Mirage Yudu, started to move away from White Cloud Mountain towards the battlefield where Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and Zhanming Yudu were. Among them, some of them escaped quickly to help Zhanming Yudu and the others. Some of them retreated slowly, their attention on the people of Taishu Temple. Once they leave the help of White Cloud Mountain and the Supreme Void Yin Yang Great Formation, the people of the Great Void Temple, who were already unable to bear the burden, would immediately be killed by the great demons of Yudu, who had the advantage. Sun Mirage Yudu did the same thing. As they moved away from White Cloud Mountain, they were stuck in the direction where Lin Feng was heading towards Shi Tianhao. The threat that Dao Venerable Xian, Yi, Kuang Heng, and Lin Daohan faced was gone, but they couldn't relax at all. The collapse of the main force of Taishu Temple and the defense line of Hao Ian Mirror in the Mysterious Sea was a devastating blow to both Taishu Temple and the war between the two worlds. The crisis of the people left behind was only temporarily alleviated. The root of the problem hadn't been solved yet. The Yudu race, who had the upper hand, could return to White Cloud Mountain at any time to launch another attack after dealing with Shi Tianhao and the White Tiger Great Sage. The temporary disappearance of the threat only gave everyone a chance to linger on. What made Dao Venerable Xian, Yi, and the rest even more helpless was that if they left White Cloud Mountain, they might be attacked by Yudu race at any time, and the situation here would collapse in an instant. The war between the two worlds had progressed to this point, and to the cultivation world of the human race in the Divine Land, the situation was extremely dangerous. Lin Feng looked coldly at Sun Mirage Yudu. The people of Taishu Temple still didn't know that the overall situation was actually worse than what they could see. Others still didn't know, but Lin Feng was very clear that the effect of heaven-severing seal boundary was gradually coming to an end. The Great Sage and the Great Sage Zhu Yin, who were now trapped in the Spirit Abyss Mountain, would soon regain their freedom. In such a delicate situation, if either of the two great demons of the ape race were to come out of the mountains and step onto the Divine Land, it would immediately cause a huge disaster. Before this, when Sword Venerable Tiangang rushed back to Shushan to deal with the changes caused by Sword Venerable Tsangming, Shunlong King, who was in the southern wasteland realm passage, seemed to have sensed something and began to move, forcing his way into the Divine Land. Xiao Yin and the Big Dipper swordsman had dealt with the changes in Shushan, but at the same time, Zhu Yi was also facing great pressure. Just like Lord Xian, Yi, and the others, Lin Feng had also received the news of Yin Namlai's failure from Yang Qing, Li Yuanfeng, Gu Jun, and the others. He stared at Mirage Sun Yudu that was still glaring at him, and his eyes gradually narrowed into slits. He turned his head to look at the primordial golden lamp. In a huge golden disk formed by the power of the primordial golden lamp outside Jade Capital Mountain, the black liquid that had condensed after absorbing the Yudu Xianhua had already completely disappeared. Under Mirage Sun Yudu's timely response, the absorption effect of the primordial golden lamp on the Yudu Xianhua seemed to have become completely ineffective. However, under the shroud of the auspicious clouds, numerous strange black markings appeared on the surface of the primordial golden lamp above Jade Capital Mountain. These black markings came together to form a strange rune that was imprinted in the center of the primordial golden lamp. The black markings continued to extend and expand continuously, and the rune gradually became complete. It contained a profound power, and under the control of Lin Feng's will, it gradually formed a unique ritual. There was also a beam of white light that shot out from the primordial golden lamp into the void. In the void far away, there seemed to be an extremely strong existence that was faintly trembling. Looking through the white light, one could see a huge black and white pillar of qi that seemed to be close yet far away in the dark void. It was faintly discernible, floating and sinking. The white light on the primordial golden lamp was connected to that black and white pillar of qi. Master Xian Sect, it's a good idea for you to borrow my power, but aren't you underestimating me too much? Mirage Sun Yudu's voice rang out outside Jade Capital Mountain. Even though he couldn't see Lin Feng's actions through the jade-colored auspicious clouds, it didn't stop him from feeling that the primordial golden lamp was intentionally absorbing his power and directing it elsewhere. Mirage Sun Yudu calmly swept a glance at the round disk that was like a golden full moon in the void. At that moment, the round disk could no longer absorb his Yudu Xianhua. A beam of black, profound light flashed by and instantly shattered the golden round disk. The main body of the primordial golden lamp on Jade Capital Mountain also trembled slightly. Lin Feng saw this, but he wasn't moved. He continued to fight with Mirage Sun Yudu, while suddenly transmitting his voice to the people of Taishu Temple who were in an awkward situation. Back then, you wanted to send my disciple into the mysterious sea. Where's the formation diagram now? Is it left on White Cloud Mountain, or has it been brought away by Taoist Venerable and the rest? Lin Feng's question stunned Tao Venerable Xian, Yi, and the rest. Their expressions couldn't help becoming slightly complicated. Back then, they had failed to scheme against Lin Feng and were instead schemed against by Lin Feng. That was the start of the war between the two worlds. From the start of the war, Taishu Temple had always been under heavy pressure. However, now wasn't the time to be embarrassed. Even though he didn't know Lin Feng's intentions, Tao Venerable Xian Yi still answered decisively, "It's here with me." Lin Feng continued to ask, "Do you still have the talismans that are made from the power of the Hao Ian mirror and the seawater of the mysterious sea that are used to direct the formation?" Tao Venerable Xian Yi's gaze froze. "Yes, bring them along with the formation diagram," Lin Feng said calmly. Tao Venerable Xian Yi said solemnly, "Even though the formation diagram is still here, the materials used to set up the ancient formation aren't complete anymore." Lin Feng said lightly, "It doesn't matter. The formation diagram and talismans are enough." Tao Venerable Xian Yi and the rest fell silent. They understood what Lin Feng meant. Lin Feng wanted to use his own power to form a formation. Such a formation cultivation was unparalleled in the world. However, Lin Feng didn't care much about it. As he spoke, his hands didn't stay idle. He continued to draw talismans and formation patterns in the void. The talismans and formation patterns were complicated and profound. These formation patterns overlapped and gradually formed a pagoda-like existence. The top of the pagoda-like existence flickered, and a misty white cloud gradually flowed out from it. Within the illusory white cloud, there seemed to be countless scenes surging out, looking both real and illusory. If it was an ordinary person, as long as they came into contact with the white cloud, they would be trapped in a mirage, unable to extricate themselves. It was the magical power that originated from one of the 7 seas of Tianyuan, the Ying Sea. However, the power was extremely gentle, like a thin stream of water that flowed for a long time. Lin Feng's expression was solemn. The situation of the 7 seas of Tianyuan was different. Unlike the Xian Sea, which could set up a guiding ritual, and the Nether Sea, which could open a crack to descend into the universe, the power of the Ying Sea was limited to the Ying Sea itself. Even though Lin Feng had the 2 fairy mountains of Yingzhou and Penglai, he couldn't change the current situation. Not to mention the 2 immortal mountains. Even if the 3 mountains of Ying Ocean were to fall into the hands of one person, allowing that person to completely control Ying Ocean, he would be able to freely control Ying Ocean's boundless power to kill those who entered Ying Ocean. However, it would be difficult for him to guide Ying Ocean's power to the Great Thousand World. It was already Lin Feng's limit to guide some of the aura of the Ying Sea out. Although the aura could communicate with the Ying Sea, it was too gentle and could not be used to fight with others. Even replenishing the power of the Ying Sea was just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. However, at this moment, Lin Feng's hand seals kept changing. Then he gently pointed at the white clouds, and they surged toward the huge black and white gas pillar in the void. Lin Feng nodded slightly. With a thought, 2 starry sea gates appeared. They were the starry sea gates that he had obtained from the White Tiger Great Sage and the Great Sage, which had been refined by Lin Feng for many years. Although Lin Feng had not completely refined and controlled the starry sea gates of the enchantress and the golden rock great sage. These two gates were enough. The two starry sea gates opened at the same time. Dazzling starlight shone inside and then gushed out, turning into specks of light. Under the guidance of Lin Feng's divine sense and Dharma power, they escaped into the void in the distance, turning into faint starlight and falling on the black and white gas pillar. On the other side, everyone in the Taishu temple had a myriad of thoughts in their hearts. They couldn't figure out what Lin Feng was trying to do. However, at this critical moment, the situation didn't allow them to hesitate too much. They could only choose to trust Lin Feng and hand the formation diagram and talisman over to Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't explain much and took the formation diagram of the primitive ancient formation. Light shone continuously in his eyes, and the formation diagram turned into a small spot of light that flew into one of Lin Feng's eyes. Large amounts of complicated formation markings and formation theories were being calculated continuously in Lin Feng's consciousness. Fighting with Mirage Sun Yudu and having to deduce such a complicated formation at the same time, even Lin Feng found it a little strenuous. Mirage Sun Yudu, who was fighting with him, immediately sensed the change. Even though he didn't know what Lin Feng was doing, he immediately strengthened his attacks, causing Lin Feng, who was already at a disadvantage, to be in an even more disadvantageous position. However, Lin Feng's expression was still as calm as before, and he only seized the time to deduce. Light suddenly flashed in his eyes, and a beam of light flew out. It spread out in the sky above Jade Capital Mountain and transformed into an incomparably huge formation. In the folded void, densely packed light spots that were like stars appeared. From afar, they looked as fine as corn, but each light spot was actually a huge ball of light that was the size of an acre. These balls of light guided everything in the surroundings, and even the plants on Jade Capital Mountain were faintly affected. Lin Feng directly struck the talisman that was made from the power of the Haoyan mirror fused with the seawater of the Xianhai into the formation, and the formation started to tremble violently. It wasn't as violent as before, turning the formation into nothingness along with the heaven and earth in all directions. Now, the operation of this primitive ancient formation was even more stable, and it suddenly opened up a world passage. On the other side of the passage, black seawater that was flashing with golden light churned continuously. It was the Xianhai. Even though the Haoyan mirror is shaken, most of the power of the Xianhai that is contending against it is also gathered there. It's convenient for me and the king of the underworld. Lin Feng pointed, and a smear of golden light was pulled out from the world passage. It landed in the crack in the void on the other side and surrounded the black and white chi pillar. Lin Feng's gaze swept across Mirage Sun Yudu outside, and he sneered. Between you and me, who exactly is the one underestimating the other? Do you think I'm purely borrowing your power? Hee, Yudu Xianhua is not bad, but it's not enough to help me succeed. At least, it's not enough to see results in a short period of time. Tenryu Jin has been holed up in the Xianhai all along, not willing to come out, yet you have delivered yourself to my doorstep. The spell on Lin Feng's hand changed, and he pointed at the primordial golden lamp. The primordial golden lamp, along with the black runes on its surface, started to tremble. You are merely a key. Chapter 1252. The blacklight markings on the primordial golden lamp finally came to a stop, and the talisman constructed by the light markings was completely completed. This profound talisman trembled continuously with the surface of the primordial golden lamp. Looking at this talisman, Lin Feng's expression had a rare seriousness. A considerable portion of his attention was placed on this talisman. As a result, his disadvantage in the battle against Mirage Sun and Yudu on the other side became even greater. However, Mirage Sun Yudu also felt uneasy. The Yudu Xianhua that had been sucked away by the primordial golden lamp still had a faint connection with him. But when the black talisman was completely formed, Mirage Sun Yudu couldn't feel the movement of the primordial golden lamp and that portion of the Yudu Xianhua anymore. The Yudu Xianhua that had been sucked away seemed to have vanished. It didn't feel like it was refined by Lin Feng, but that Yudu Xianhua had mysteriously vanished from this world. Mirage Sun Yudu was slightly astonished. He had thought that Lin Feng had guided his power away to offer Buddha a borrowed flower, to have some effect and nourish some things. The biggest possibility was to borrow his power to accelerate that ominous sword that had never shown itself. Therefore, Mirage Sun Yudu decisively adapted and adjusted his Yudu Xianhua so that Lin Feng couldn't borrow power. Even though a portion of the Yudu Xianhua was still sucked away, Mirage Sun Yudu felt that it was no big deal. But looking at it now, the situation was different from what he had imagined. Separated by Jade Capital Mountain and Lin Feng's power, Mirage Sun Yudu couldn't discern what Lin Feng was doing. However, the cultivators of Taishu Temple had sent something up Jade Capital Mountain, and this made Mirage Sun Yudu pay attention to it. At that moment, there seemed to be an astonishing change happening on Jade Capital Mountain. Mirage Sun Yudu could feel that Lin Feng was slightly distracted. He was clearly at a disadvantage, but he still dared to be distracted. Such an abnormal action naturally made Mirage Sun Yudu even more wary. He didn't say anything and just stopped. He no longer moved towards Shi, Tianhao, Light Beheader, and the rest. Instead, he started to concentrate on attacking Lin Feng. Since you are distracted, since your strength is declining, since you have some kind of plan, then I will simply attack and completely break through your defense, turning all your plans into rootless trees. Before your plan can take effect, I'll kill you first, and all your actions will be in vain. Fantasy Sun and Yudu's attacks suddenly became more urgent, and Lin Feng naturally felt it clearly. However, he didn't care about it. The spells on his hands changed continuously, and waves of magic power were struck out by him. They landed on the black runes in the center of the primordial golden lamp, and the ripples on the black runes became more and more intense. Lin Feng pointed his finger, and a golden light suddenly flew out and fell into the primordial golden lamp, hovering above the black rune. The golden light was none other than the golden alms bowl Lin Feng had obtained from Golden Cicada, the Tathagata relic. The golden alms bowl landed on the black talisman, and both of them shook at the same time. From the golden alms bowl, a brilliance continuously flowed. Within that brilliance, there was a silent area, like a black hole, which seemed to contain an extremely terrifying existence. At that moment, the golden light in the golden alms bowl churned and surged continuously, gradually fusing into the center of the black talisman. The black talisman trembled violently, and numerous ribbon-like streams of light suddenly appeared at the edges of the talisman. They stretched out in all directions, and every stream of light was the materialization of the great Tao of heaven and earth. At that moment, these ribbons of light were connected to the black talisman, and they started to tremble violently along with the talisman. Cries of the great Tao rang out from within. Outside Jade Capital Mountain, Fantasy Sun and Yudu's gaze suddenly focused. The expressions of Tao Venerable Xian, Yi, Kuang Heng, Lin Daoan, and the rest in Taishu Temple also changed slightly. What exactly is Lin Feng doing? Doubt appeared in Fantasy Sun and Yudu's eyes. He can't be going through the calamity at this time, right? Isn't that too absurd? What exactly is he doing? Under the shroud of the auspicious clouds, Lin Feng's spell changed again, and he pointed in another direction. The primordial golden lamp carried the black talisman and escaped into the void. Under the guidance of the white light, the primordial golden lamp also floated to the front of the black and white pillar of Qi. The black and white pillar of Qi was surrounded by the power of the three Seas: Mysterious Sea, Sanctuary Sea, and Star Sea. Star radiance, white smoke, and golden light intertwined together. When the black talisman on the primordial golden lamp got close, the black and white pillar of Qi and the surrounding star radiance started to tremble together. The power of the three Seas seemed to have received some kind of special stimulation, and an abnormal change actually occurred. The surging starlight that was guided out of the two gates of star sea became more and more majestic. It surged out in all directions and circled around the black and white pillar of chi. The power of sanctuary sea, which had never been able to descend into the boundless world on a large scale, also became unusually restless at this moment, as if it had been angered. White smoke surged out of the pagoda, formed by numerous runes. Its scale and momentum were unprecedentedly strong, and it also protected the black and white pillar of chi together with the starlight. Under the control of the Dragon Clan, the mysterious sea had always been their exclusive domain. Although Lin Feng took advantage of the battle between the Dragon Clan and the Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror to temporarily open the passage to receive part of the power of the mysterious sea, it could not be used on a large scale. In fact, the Tenryu Jin in the mysterious sea had already noticed that Lin Feng was having more and more difficulty in using the power of the mysterious sea. However, at this moment, a large amount of golden light was drawn out of the mysterious sea as if it had received some kind of special stimulation. The Dragon Clan, who was wrestling with the Haotian Mirror, could not effectively stop it. The golden light formed by the power of the mysterious sea, the starlight formed by the power of the star sea, and the white smoke formed by the power of the sanctuary sea gathered together and reached a wonderful balance, covering the black and white pillar of chi. Slowly, the black talisman on the primordial golden lamp flew out independently and landed on the black and white pillar of chi. The light ribbons formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth around the black talisman broke one by one at this moment. The great Tao of heaven and earth collapsed at this moment, and the black talisman also became fragmented and blurred. In the end, it became a black hole. Suddenly, water surged out of the black hole. It was silent and seemed to have no color. It was neither black nor white, and it was indescribable. However, this water seemed to be the most terrifying existence in the world. Not only did it destroy all life, but it also seemed to be able to destroy the entire creation. Everything in the world, including the creation of the world itself, reached its end and was destroyed. All the spiritual chi and all the principles no longer existed. The moment this water appeared, outside Jade Capital Mountain, Sun Fantasy Yuda's expression suddenly changed. He didn't trigger the great Tao's collapse calamity. He opened a crack that leads to the Dead Sea. What was triggered by Lin Feng wasn't the Dharma-ending calamity, nor was it the collapse of the great Tao. Instead, it was the water formed by the most mysterious power of the Dead Sea in the seven seas of heaven's primordial origin. As soon as this water appeared, countless ribbons of light lit up in the void. All the great Tao of heaven and earth wailed, as if it was welcoming the end of the world, the Dharma-ending era. When Lin Feng saw this scene, he laughed. Today is indeed the day. It's really not easy to succeed. The terrifying water of the Dead Sea seemed to be able to destroy everything. Its first target was that black and white pillar of chi. However, a will that came out of the black and white pillar of chi didn't feel any fear. Instead, it seemed incomparably excited and impassioned. Meanwhile, the power of the three seas, mysterious sea, sanctuary sea, and star sea, seemed to share a common enemy as they faced the water of the Dead Sea together. Although a large amount of star radiance, golden light, and white smoke were destroyed, they were extracted from their respective sources in an even more violent manner, blocking the water of the Dead Sea. The power of both sides clashed continuously, but during this process, the black and white pillar of chi that was protected by the power of the three seas started to guide a large amount of the power of the Dead Sea, which had been moderated, into its own body. The terrifying aura that seemed to want to destroy the world became even more shocking and ruthless at this moment. After the water of the Dead Sea sensed the terrifying aura, it surged even more violently. The light of the great path manifested in the void flickered incessantly, flickering between bright and dark. The universe was shaking as if an extremely terrifying thing was being nurtured, and the moment it was born, it heralded the destruction and end of everything. The speed of its birth was extremely terrifying. In the blink of an eye, it continued to advance by leaps and bounds. Lin Feng didn't just stand by and watch. Instead, after putting away the primordial golden lamp, he continued to inject magic power into the black and white pillar of qi. The aura contained in the black and white pillar of qi kept changing between ruthlessness and peacefulness. This peacefulness didn't hurt its sharpness, but it was like a sharp sword being sheathed. The black hole that was pouring out the water of the Dead Sea was gradually healing, and the water of the Dead Sea was also decreasing. As the water of the Dead Sea decreased, the power of the other three seas started to weaken accordingly. Everything seemed to be gradually returning to peace. Only inside the black and white pillar of qi, the terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth became more and more ferocious and started to shake the boundless universe. In the end, Lin Feng even retracted the heaven-punishing sword formation that was fighting against Mirage Sun Yudu. The spells on his hands changed together, and then he suddenly brought them together in front of his chest, forming a mysterious mudra and pointing towards the black and white pillar of energy. The black and white pillar of qi suddenly stopped. On the other side, the line of defense of Jade Capital Mountain that had lost Lin Feng's support suddenly collapsed. The jade-colored auspicious clouds were forcefully broken, and the sky was filled with black Yudu. The huge body of Mirage Sun Yudu appeared in front of Lin Feng. But at the same time, Lin Feng waved his hand, and the black and white pillar of qi passed through layers of time and space, descending from the sky. The black and white pillar of qi trembled, and then rays of light began to shoot out from within, illuminating the dark void of the universe in front of them. Wherever the light reached, the world of creation began to be torn apart. Mirage Sun Yudu looked at the black and white pillar of qi in front of him, and his expression was unprecedentedly solemn. In the distance, Dao, Venerable Xian, Yi, and the rest had extremely complicated expressions. At this moment, the black and white pillar of qi gradually collapsed, and an incomparably terrifying power spread out from within, becoming clearer and clearer. Between heaven and earth, countless rays of the great Tao lit up. Then they wailed, trembled, and trembled. They couldn't resist and broke apart, spreading in all directions. The entire great heaven primordial world was shaken at this moment. Chapter 1253. The crack in the Dead Sea had already closed completely. The black and white pillar of qi disintegrated at this moment. Endless light emerged from it and spread in all directions. Then, the light gradually gathered and rushed up, forming a light pillar at the top of Yujing Mountain. The huge Yujing Mountain and the lush branches of the mysterious Heaven Treasure Tree were shaking at this moment. In the Xintian Eternal Light Cave, the disheveled old man who seemed to care about nothing stopped what he was doing and raised his head. His eyes were lifeless, as if there was no focus in them. He just stared blankly at the sky. The next moment, he suddenly wiped the chessboard with his trembling hand. The chess pieces flew back into the chess box, leaving only an empty chessboard. Then, the old man took the chess pieces out of the box and began to set up a new chess game on the empty chessboard. The light pillar was neither black nor white. Its color was chaotic and indistinct. It revealed a power that could destroy heaven and earth. All the evil qi in the great Tianyuan world was activated at this moment. Plants withered, living beings perished, and spiritual qi dissipated. All the evil qi in the world gathered toward the light pillar and condensed into a sharp sword. The whole world turned into a long sword at this moment. It was a sword of the end. As the sword light flashed, heaven and earth trembled. Ding of Shenzhou, which Lin Feng had placed in the yin and yang life and death formation, kept shaking at this moment. It emitted a mental fluctuation of extreme fear and even terror. The Taishu Temple in Xian Dao Master's hand shook and disintegrated, turning back into the supreme formation-breaking drum and the void yin-yang bell. Zhu Yi, who was far away at the southern wasteland realm's passageway, looked at the changes in the sky and earth and the turbulent flow of the evil chi. He could feel the Permitha Golden Bridge beneath his feet trembling nonstop at this moment. Although he was far away, he could clearly feel fear. On the netherworld altar, the king of the underworld, who was on the verge of success in activating the ritual, looked extremely serious. His hands kept changing the incantation gestures, and he continued to carry out the ritual with all his might. Around the altar, both the Book of Life and Death in Yuming's hands and the Supreme Imperial Palace controlled by Liang Pan in the void were shaken. The Book of Life and Death moved on its own even though there was no wind. The pages kept flipping, and Taoist Yuming could not control it even if he wanted to. The Supreme Imperial Palace, which was the pinnacle of magic treasures refined by human sovereigns, was so powerful that even the Book of Life and Death couldn't raise its head. At this moment, the purple and gold light was flashing crazily. It was like a majestic and domineering emperor. Even in the face of extreme threats, it refused to bow its head and submit. The vast light and shadow continued to condense in the sky above the Supreme Imperial Palace. But even so, the majestic Imperial Palace, which was like a heavenly palace, also showed an uncontrollable state. It was as if a person was involuntarily trembling, and the emperor's aura instantly wilted. Within Tianjing City, a gigantic wheel of light that seemed to be formed from the myriad worlds of the heavens appeared. As it rotated, it attracted the power of creation. It rose into the sky above Tianjing City and rotated rapidly. Its rotation speed was so fast that it seemed like it would go out of control at any moment. Outside the vast thousand worlds, in the boundless void, there was a city wall that stretched as far as the eye could see. Silently, it stretched across the dark universe, as if it had fallen into a deep slumber. But at this moment, the great wall suddenly shook violently. It was as if someone had been awakened from a deep slumber, or as if they had fallen into a nightmare that they couldn't extricate themselves from. Suddenly, a domain passageway split open in the vast thousand worlds. Within it, thousands of calamities such as the True Blood River, the Nether Evil Light, and the 9 Nether Evil Winds surged together. It was the scene of doomsday in the Netherworld Sea. As the red light flickered in the Netherworld Sea, it converged to form a gigantic stone pillar. It was the magic treasure of creation born from the Netherworld Sea, the heavenly admonition. The heavenly admonition, which had always made other living beings feel that disaster was ominous and made them panic and worry, was actually trembling slightly at this moment. It was as if it was extremely uneasy. Under the influence of the heavenly admonition, the waves of the Netherworld Sea went berserk, setting off countless destructive storms. In the great heaven primordial world, all the magic treasures of creation that had reached the level of creation could not help but be attracted at this moment. They could not help but tremble slightly. Regardless of whether it was the majestic and domineering Supreme Imperial Palace, or the majestic and heavy ding of Shenzhou that suppressed the divine land, all the magic treasures of creation, no matter how they resisted or how they tried to conceal themselves, could feel a kind of emotion from them. Fear. In addition to a deep sense of dread, there was also the emotion of fear. It was as if they were facing an opponent that they absolutely could not defeat. Even if they were unwilling to surrender and tried their best to resist, they could not ignore the objective gap in strength. Thus, they naturally felt fear. On Yujing Mountain, the gate of Star Sea and the Ing Sea symbol tower had disappeared. Only the primitive ancient formation was left, which still opened up the boundary and led to the mysterious sea. The mysterious sea was constantly rising and falling. In the sea, there seemed to be a mirror light, which was also attracted by the unparalleled sword on Yujing Mountain. It was the #1 magic treasure of the great heaven primordial world since ancient times, the Haoyan mirror. But at this moment, the incomplete Haoyan mirror, after feeling the world-destroying sharpness, also emitted a deep sense of dread. That is the Haoyan mirror. Tao Master Qing Ning looked a little lost. Even if it is incomplete, it is still the Hao Yin mirror. Fu Yinkong sighed. There has never been a magic treasure that could put such pressure on the Hao Yin mirror alone. Dao Master Xian, Yi, and Kuang Heng looked at this scene in silence. Lin Daohan said slowly, Uncle Master Qingning, Uncle Master Fu, you should have felt it too, right? Dao Master Qingning and Fu Yunkong did not speak, but they naturally felt it. Not only them, but all the top experts in the divine land, and even the entire great heaven primordial world, whether they were in the vast thousand worlds or in the dimensional spaces of the medium worlds, felt it. The creation of heaven and earth was shaken. Whether it was the human experts or the great demons, they all clearly felt that an extremely terrifying and powerful existence had come to this world. This kind of feeling was something that some of the older people had experienced before. In history, when the Hao Yin mirror was restored, it would cause the entire great heaven primordial world to be shaken just like this. It was as if it was announcing to the world that the king had returned. All the experts in the great heaven primordial world, whether they were humans or demons, whether they were fighting or not, had the same thought in their minds. That sword has reappeared. The master of the celestial sect of wonders has finally succeeded. In the history of the great heaven primordial world, the first magic treasure that can truly rival the perfect Hao Yin mirror has appeared. Its lethality might even surpass the Hao Yin mirror. On Jade Capital Mountain, two beams of light, one black and one white, suddenly flashed out from the pillar of light that pierced through the heavens and earth. The white light turned into a boy and came to Lin Feng's side, while the black light suddenly expanded between heaven and earth, turning into a terrifying spell formation that could destroy all life. With the pillar of light as the center, it kept spinning. A figure slowly walked out of the pillar of light. It was a tall woman who looked to be in her 20s. Her hair was indistinguishable, and it was neither black nor white. Her face was peerless. Her eyes flashed with an indescribable, mysterious brilliance, like the water of the Dead Sea. After this woman appeared, the entire world lost its color. Mirage Sun Yudu looked at that woman, and his brows furrowed. The creation magic treasure of the human race. The primordial spirit of the magic treasure shouldn't manifest a human form. What exactly? Just as he was thinking, he saw the woman's gaze suddenly looking at him. Her gaze was like a sharp sword light, and as it flashed coldly, it caused a resplendent black profound light that filled the sky to dim down. Mirage Sun Yudu's heart trembled. You are indeed the primordial spirit of that ferocious sword? The woman didn't reply. She raised her right hand, and light flowed in her palm, gathering to form a long sword. The blade of the sword was covered in a chaotic and blurry color, as if everything was coming to an end. Creation was coming to an end, returning to nothingness. Meanwhile, at the edge of the sword, there were two spots of flowing light, one black and one white. They flowed and slid continuously at the edge of the sword, and the terrifying sword made people tremble in fear. The woman raised the long sword high in her right hand and pointed at the void above her head. The majestic pillar of light and the malevolent air that came from all directions were guided along with her action of raising the sword. All of them gathered at the tip of the sword, forming an air pillar that bystanders couldn't see with their eyes, but could feel its existence. This air pillar seemed to connect the heaven primordial world, and right after that, the woman swung her right hand down and slashed at Mirage Sun Yudu's head. The three long horns on Mirage Sun Yudu's head flashed with brilliance, and black divine markings filled the void. A resplendent black light shot out from the heart of his brows and fused into a brilliant galaxy. The ribbons of light that were formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth were completely swallowed by the black, profound light. The ear-piercing wail of the great Tao became hoarse and low, revealing a sense of despair and terror. However, the blade of the sword that slashed down was even more ruthless, even more violent, and even more invincible. As the blade of the sword slashed down, that terrifying power completely burst forth. The distant sanctuary sea was shaken, and the boundless white clouds suddenly tumbled and shattered. In the mysterious sea, large amounts of golden light exploded, and in the galaxy, countless star projections were destroyed, raising a storm of starlight. In the empty sea, void storms wreaked havoc and tore open terrifying cracks in time and space. In the netherworld sea, the red pillar of light, that heavenly calamity had transformed and shook violently, and tens of thousands of calamities and tribulations wreaked havoc in the netherworld sea. This sword startled the 5 seas of heaven primordial world. The incomparable sharpness forcefully slashed apart the Yudu profound flower of Mirage Sun Yudu. The black profound light and the resplendent starlight crumbled together, and the light that was formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth completely dissipated. This was the sword of Tao annihilation, and it could destroy all the Tao in the world. Mirage Sun Yudu's eyes were filled with astonishment, and his body suddenly lit up with purple light. A broken horn appeared, and world-shaking purple runes appeared. It was the Yudu profound flower. That was the broken horn that Yuang Tianhai had left behind after her death, and it was kept by Mirage Sun Yudu. He couldn't actively use the power inside, but he could use it to protect himself. At this moment, it was activated by that terrifying sword, and the dazzling Yudu profound flower spewed out from the horn. Even though it wasn't as powerful as the descent of Yuhuang Tianhai, the light transformed into a purple barrier that instantly severed the heavens. Even Mirage Sun Yudu's full-powered attack couldn't break through the defense of this purple light barrier. However, under the slash of that terrifying sword of Tao annihilation, the purple light barrier was still shattered. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a grunt, and his body moved back hurriedly. Black light that was like blood scattered through the sky. After that woman slashed out, she turned to look at Lin Feng, who was at the side. She saw Lin Feng looking at her with a faint smile on his face. When she saw Lin Feng, the woman had no emotions to speak of. Her cold and exquisite face that was like a doll seemed to change slightly, and there was light flashing in her indifferent eyes. The terrifying sword vanished from her palm, and the woman lowered her head to Lin Feng. She said softly, "My lord." Chapter 1254. Lin Feng looked at the woman in front of him and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Xianli." The woman who had forced back Sun Mirage and Yudu was none other than Xianli, and the terrifying world annihilation sword was naturally heaven punishing sword. Lin Feng stretched out a hand to her, and she lowered her head gently. Her sharp and cold gaze softened slightly, and she walked to Lin Feng's side. She also stretched out a hand and placed it on Lin Feng's palm. Specks of light started to float on her body, and she gradually disappeared as though she had transformed into a flowing light. The light continued to gather on Lin Feng's palm and finally transformed into a longsword. The style of the longsword wasn't very outstanding, but the surface of the blade was flashing with a mysterious, chaotic, and blurry light. It gave off an astonishing, fiendish will. All the fiendish chi in heaven primordial great world was gathering on the blade, making this ominous sword even more evil. The blade itself didn't show any color of gold or iron, as though it wasn't made of metal. Instead, it was like a pool of autumn water with light flowing around it. However, the color of the water was hard to distinguish. It was neither black nor white, and even though it was flashing with light, it gave off a feeling of death and stillness. It was like the terrifying water of the Dead Sea. Lin Feng held the heaven-punishing sword in his hand, feeling the concept of power contained within, as well as every detail of the entire magic treasure inside and out. Very quickly, he understood the current state of this peerlessly vicious sword. The power of Tao annihilation is extremely strong, and it's indisputably the strongest magic treasure in the history of Heaven Primordial Great World. In the entire Heaven Primordial Great World, only the Dead Sea could be more fiendish and inauspicious. Lin Feng thought to himself, however, because the power of Tao annihilation is too strong, it has become a double-edged sword. If I'm not careful, I might hurt myself instead. This was within Lin Feng's expectations. He had sealed heaven-punishing sword all these years, and while he was raising its power, he had also been dealing with this problem. If I let profoundly execute on her own, she'll probably lose control in less than 3 strikes. If I control it, I should be able to execute 5 strikes in a short period of time. Lin Feng quickly came to a conclusion. She only used one sword just now and left another one as a backup. So, there are 3 more swords left. His lips curled into a faint smile. That's enough. Lin Feng gripped the Heaven Destroyer sword in his hand and raised it above his head. Wherever the sword pointed, the heaven and earth evil chi gathered and shot up into the sky, spinning nonstop in the void, turning into a giant vortex. The power of the yin and yang life and death formation began to operate again. Together with the radiance of Yujing Mountain, it supported Lin Feng's body. At the same time, the black and white divine light of fate on Lin Feng's body began to surge, making him look like a deity descending to the mortal world. The dark void of the universe was boundless, but at this moment, it seemed to have been completely filled by that huge vortex, turning the entire void into a vortex. The vortex formed by the heaven and earth evil chi shook the boundless universe, as though the entire creation was welcoming the end of the world. Dao Venerable Xian Yi, Kuang Heng, and Lin Daohan, who had returned to reinforce White Cloud Mountain and rebuilt the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace, had solemn expressions when they saw this. Being in the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace of White Cloud Mountain, they could only prevent themselves from being affected by the aftermath. If they were to face it head-on, with the current lineup of people left behind to guard Taishu Temple and the power of the 9 heavens of the Great Void Palace, they wouldn't be able to withstand the power of one strike from the Heaven Destroyer sword, even if they defended with all their might. Phantom Son, Yuda's expression was extremely solemn. His left claw was holding onto the broken horn that came from Yuhuang's celestial sea, while there was a wound on his right claw. Purple blood that flickered with a black glow flowed continuously from it. It couldn't be stopped, and it kept floating in the void. The turbulence in the void of the boundless universe was also affecting the boundless universe. The reappearance of the Heaven Destroyer sword shook the entire boundless universe. In the Divine Land, Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage, who had already beaten Zhang Ming and Yudu to the point that they couldn't retaliate, had no choice but to retreat after learning that Green Crest Yudu, Jingyin Yudu, and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu had left White Cloud Mountain to attack them. The situation instantly reversed, and it became a situation where Green Crest Yudu and the rest chased after Shi Tianhao and White Tiger Great Sage. This made Shi Tianhao, Great Chanyu of the Northern Militant, and the rest extremely depressed. However, when the Heaven Destroyer sword's power shook the boundless universe, Green Crest Yudu, Jingyin Yudu, and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu naturally felt that terrifying power. Even someone as arrogant as them had to stop and observe the situation at that moment. That vicious whirlpool that seemed to have shrouded the entire boundless universe made them feel like there was a blade on their backs. Lin Feng didn't care about them. He didn't even look at Sun Mirage Yudu in front of him. Instead, he raised his head to look at the Heaven Destroyer sword in his hand. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Little girl, don't be arrogant. You still have room for improvement in the future. The Heaven Destroyer sword gave off a long cry, and Lin Feng's gaze passed through the nameless ancient formation that was still in operation to look at the Xianhai world on the other side of the boundary. On the other side of the boundary, the black sea that was flashing with golden light was trembling nonstop. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, and his gaze passed through the layers of obstacles. Gradually, countless lights and shadows were reflected in his eyes, changing unpredictably. In the depths of the Xianhai world, there was a mirror light that was standing in the center of the Xianhai storm. It was like a piece of reef that was fixed on the surface of the sea. The mirror light came from a round mirror that had no frame or frame. It was just a round mirror that looked like the sun and moon hanging high up in the sky. It looked insignificant, It gave people a feeling that it was as vast as the sky. It was as though it was the center of the universe, and everything surrounded and gathered around it. Even in the Xianhai that was controlled by the dragon race, ribbons of light extended out from the void and connected to the surroundings of the mirror. As the mirror light flickered, it trembled nonstop, triggering the resonance of all the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was the Haotian mirror. Under the shroud of the Haotian mirror's light, there were a few figures sitting cross-legged. The magic power in their bodies circulated to form a ball of light that seemed illusory yet real. The ball of light was split into 9 layers, and it looked like the 9 heavens of the Great Void Imperial Court. There was a group of people in the ball of light, and the leader was an elder with his eyes tightly shut. He was naturally Lord Taiwan. The others sat behind him, and they were all circulating their magic power to condense the 9 heavens of the Great Void Imperial Court. They then added their power to the Haotian mirror, forming a hole to resist the raging waves from the Xianhai world. A figure floated above the head of the supreme, solitary Tao Lord. It was ethereal and profound, causing others to be unable to see its appearance clearly, yet they would naturally arouse the thought of prostrating themselves in worship. It was as if it was the heaven Tao. Lin Feng looked at the light figure, and his eyes flickered slightly. Is this the foundation left behind by the Taishu Taoist? No wonder it could last so long in the Xianhai world, but it will end here. Although separated by layers of void, Lin Feng could see that the light figure above Lord Taiwan's head originated from a talisman in Lord Taiwan's hand. Although it was not a one-time use, its power was constantly weakening under continuous consumption. It seemed that it would take a long time to recover after this. That is, if the people of the Taishu Temple could still survive this calamity. Although the Haotian mirror stood in the Xianhai world like a stabilizing needle, protecting Lord Taiwan and the others, anyone could clearly see that the power of the Haotian mirror was constantly declining. It was not that the Haotian mirror was further damaged, and its power was weakening, but this magic treasure seemed to be gradually calming down, making it impossible for Lord Taiwan and the others to freely use its current full power. Lin Feng looked up, and in another direction, on the other side of the void, there was another gap in the Xianhai world. From that gap, streams of light flew out and fell on the Haotian mirror. It was under the influence of this stream of light that the Haotian mirror became more and more unstable. Within the waves of the mysterious sea, there was an enormous golden figure faintly discernible, continuously bobbing up and down in the pitch-black seawater. An unprecedentedly vast draconic aura emanated from within. This is the most powerful draconic aura that Lin Feng has personally come into contact with. Needless to say, that was the current clan leader of the Dragon Clan, the Yuan Dragon King. This great demon of the Dragon Clan controlled the storm that filled the sky, wreaking havoc in the Xianhai world, attacking the defense line formed by the Haotian Mirror and the 9 heavens of the Taishu Temple. Under the continuous impact of the monstrous flood, the dam was already unable to bear the burden. And at this moment, there were people drilling holes in the dam. At this moment, the defense line of the Haotian Mirror and Lord Taiwan and the others was finally broken by the Yuan Dragon King in the Xianhai world. The black seawater that filled the sky began to wash away the last reef in the center of the sea. At this moment, the 9 heavens of the Taishu Temple shattered, and streams of light flew in all directions. As for the Haotian Mirror, it shook and was swept up by the seawater. On the other side of the void, a deep voice came from the gap in the void realm. Order! That was the voice of the king of the underworld. Following this deep voice, the streams of light that extended out from the gap still wrapped tightly around the Haotian Mirror, then swept up the Haotian Mirror and quickly retracted it. A shocking dragon roar came from the Xianhai world, and the black seawater wrapped around the Haotian Mirror, refusing to let go. Although he could not establish a connection with the Haotian Mirror like Yin Xinghe, the Yuan Dragon King, who was using the power of the Xianhai world, was much stronger than Yin Xinghe. On the netherworld altar, the king of the underworld held the long banner in his hand and looked at this scene coldly. His hand seals changed continuously, and he shouted again, "Go!" As he shouted, the long banner in his hand suddenly shattered, and the Xianhai world in front of him began to disappear. Suddenly, a shocking power exploded, shaking the Xianhai world, and Yin Xinghe's evil soul began to use all its strength to activate the Haoyan mirror. At this moment, the Haoyan mirror suddenly lit up, and its power surged, as if it was being activated again. Lord Tai and the others were trapped in the Xianhai world, and it was difficult for them to move. Although the Yuan Dragon King was distracted by the Haoyan mirror, he did not ignore them. The Kunlun Dragon King appeared from the sea, and with the support of the power of the Xianhai world, his power surged, and he pounced towards them. The battle between the three parties had reached the final juncture, and at this moment, Lin Feng's voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. "King of the Underworld, I have said before that this era does not belong to you." In the void, Lin Feng raised the heaven-punishing sword and slashed down. The power of the huge whirlpool suddenly condensed, turning into a formless sword edge, and actually pierced through the realm tunnel created by the primitive ancient formation, directly attacking the Xianhai world. The violent power slashed into the space of the Xianhai world, and the Haoyan mirror shook violently. The Xianhai world and the dragon race, the Taishu temple, the king of the underworld, and Yin Xinghe, and the two great treasures clashed, forming a destructive domain. The Xianhai world, one of the seven seas of Tianyuan, was forcibly torn open, and all the formless spiritual energy and tangible things were annihilated together. But Lin Feng's violent sword edge did not stop there, and it continued forward. The terrifying sword edge that could destroy the heaven and earth. After cutting off the light flow that Yin Xinghe's spiritual energy had attached to the Haoyan mirror, continued to attack the gap that the king of the underworld had created. Chapter 1255. In the void, Lin Feng's terrifying sword slashed through the air and cut off the intense fight between the dragon race, the Taishu temple, and the king of the underworld over the Haoyan mirror. As one of the seven seas of heavenly primordial heaven, a huge crack appeared in the boundless Xian Sea at this moment. The scale of this crack was much larger than the crack that Lin Feng had opened with the primitive ancient formation and the king of the underworld had opened with his banner. It tore the sky of the Xian Sea apart like a scar in the sky. The connection between the dragon race, the Taishu temple, and the king of the underworld to the Haoyan mirror was severed at this moment. Lin Feng's sword did not stop there. It continued to chase after the king of the underworld through the crack in the netherworld sea. The king of the underworld had destroyed his banner earlier, causing the crack to be destroyed as well. It gradually started to close up, but the ruthless edge of the sword that could annihilate the heavens and annihilate the Tao swept through everything before it. It forcefully slashed apart the spatial domain that was gradually distorting and closing up, and it once again tore open an enormous gap there. After that, it directly broke through the void of the domain and descended from the sky above the netherworld sacrificial altar. This sword passed through two boundary passageways and crossed the Xian Sea. Because of the previous collision and the shuttling of the Xianhai realm, when the sword descended on the netherworld altar, it no longer had the terrifying power that seemed to be able to completely destroy the world. However, when the invisible sword edge that gathered the vicious aura of the universe appeared in the sky above the netherworld altar, everyone present still felt like their guts were going to explode. Without any hesitation, Gu Jun immediately activated the longevity lotus seat and swept Yang Qing, Li Yuanfeng, Gu Yuankai, and the others away. He retreated rapidly. Liang Pan's expression was as calm as water. However, his movements were even faster than Gu Jun's as he urged the Grand Imperial Palace to retreat. The king of the underworld, who had been completely locked onto by this sword and had nowhere to run, had an extremely solemn expression. His eyes turned completely black, like the darkest abyss in the world. He said in a deep voice, "Sacrifice." The three life and death netherworld Tao fruits flew out, and Taoist Blood River, who was guarding the Netherworld sacrificial altar, let out a loud sigh. He seemed to be resentful and relieved. And then he was enveloped by the black light formed from the 3 Tao fruits and kept within the Netherworld's sacrificial altar. His body began to slowly turn into dust on the black altar without making a single sound. On the other hand, the black altar that had completely activated the Netherworld ritual to its limits grew stronger, more profound, and more evil. The king of the underworld took the Book of Life and Death from Taoist Yuming's hands. As the Book of Life and Death flipped through it, it fused with the power of the Netherworld ritual. At practically the same time, the terrifying sword that could destroy the heavens and the earth struck the Netherworld altar. Countless black lights instantly shattered and shot out in all directions. The splattering light was like a black rain of light in the void. Some of the Yama King, Emo, Shilaw, and even the Netherworld Royal Brush who were attached to the black sacrificial altar fled in all directions. Some of them stayed close to the sacrificial altar, hoping that they could escape this calamity. However, at this moment, all of the Underworld Hall cultivators were engulfed by the terrifying sword projections and the black rain of light. All of them were riddled with holes. Even Dao integration stage cultivators like King Yinluo and Imo Shilaw were unable to defend themselves. Their primordial spirits were shattered by the sword projections that shot out from the rain of light, and they died on the spot. Taoist Yuming, who was undergoing tribulation, wailed in anguish, and his primordial spirit was also riddled with wounds. The king of the underworld and Yin Xinghe's evil soul were the most powerful on the altar, but they were also the primary targets of Lin Feng's attack. Even though the power of the Netherworld ritual had formed a barrier, it was still instantly sliced through by the terrifying sword projections. Black light swirled around the king of the underworld's body, and Yin Xinghe's body glowed with great void mystic light. They stood in front of the king of the underworld, but the two of them were also pierced through by the sword projections. The Book of Life and Death vibrated incessantly, and its pages twisted and contorted violently in the void. Then, it emitted a piercing sound as its pages were shredded and torn apart. It was as if they were pieces of paper fluttering in the void. There were many holes all over the king of the underworld's body, and black light seeped out from the holes. It was as if he was bleeding, and it couldn't be stopped at all as it covered his entire body. The human form formed by his primordial spirit had his right arm and shoulder disappear, and a vast amount of black light gushed out. Meanwhile, the terrifying sword projections that blotted out heaven and earth still rained down like a torrential rain, carving out mournful fissures in the void one after another. The king of the underworld roared, and his finger pointed at the black vortex that had enveloped Yin Xinghe. The vortex spun in reverse again, and as it spun rapidly, it exploded. The king of the underworld used the life and death underworld Dao fruit to collect Yin Xinghe's remnant soul, which was even more severely injured, and the Book of Life and Death, as well as Taoist Yuming, who was on his last breath. The black vortex exploded and transformed into a black light that swept up the king of the underworld, and he instantly disappeared. The entire lineage of the king of the underworld, under Lin Feng's sword that traversed through realms, was on the brink of extinction. The king of the underworld was severely injured. Blood River Taoist's evil soul was completely destroyed. Taoist Yuming was on the brink of death, and the Book of Life and Death was severely damaged. All the cultivators of the Underworld Hall, starting from King Yama and King Taishan, Imo Shiluo, were completely annihilated. This terrifying sword made Emperor Zhou, Liang Pan, and Gu Jun fall silent. Gu Jun paused for a moment, then drove the longevity Lotus Throne to chase after the king of the underworld. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, Liang Pan also urged the Grand Imperial Palace to chase after the king of the underworld. In the mysterious sea, after witnessing Lin Feng's ruthless sword intent, the experts of the dragon race and Taishu Temple all felt a chill in their hearts. The mysterious sea, which was previously in a state of chaos, actually had a short moment of peace at this moment. All that was left was that shocking crack that was constantly twisting. As for the Haotian mirror, it floated in the void and was sucked away by that crack, flying out of the mysterious sea. The dragon race and Taishu Temple came back to their senses at the same time. Dragon roars filled the sky, and the mysterious sea shook violently again. It wanted to mend the crack and leave the Haotian mirror behind. In the camp of Taishu Temple, Dao Venerable Tai, Shoichi Dashin, and Dao Venerable Qing Yi stood side by side. Behind them were Wu Mengqi, Dao Venerable Yiyuan, and the rest. Shoichi Dashin said solemnly. In the end, he still managed to refine that ruthless sword. If we didn't enter the mysterious sea, our temple wouldn't have been shaken by the king of the underworld. Even if we had to fight against the Yudu race, the Haotian mirror wouldn't have been shaken by that scoundrel, the king of the underworld. As a result, the situation wouldn't have deteriorated to such an extent. Dao Venerable Qing Yi's face was pale, and his expression was cold. It looks like he turned the tide, but he used this chance to exhaust our temple, helping him to dominate the world. From now on, even our temple will find it hard to restrain him and his ruthless sword that could harm the world. Dao Venerable Qing, he closed his eyes tightly. The most important thing now is to regain control of the Haotian mirror and leave the mysterious sea. This battle is no longer suitable. After saying that, determination flashed across his face, and he once again raised the rune that had manifested the figure of the Taishu Taoist. The pure white rune that was flashing with a faint golden radiance flew into the sky and suddenly burst into flames. Its powerful power fixed the crack in the mysterious sea that was twisting nonstop. As Dao Venerable Qing Yi shouted, he swept up the people of Taishu Temple beside him and rushed toward the crack. The dragon's roar resounded through the mysterious sea, and it ignored Lin Feng's attack on the king of the underworld. It focused all its attention on the people of Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror. Yuan Dragon King and Kunlun Dragon King rushed out of the sea together, sweeping up monstrous black water and golden light. They formed a violent wave that covered the sky and covered the earth as they attacked the crack. The sorrowful wail of the great Tao was like rolling thunder, shaking the minds of the people of Taishu Temple and making them feel dizzy. The burning rune in the void blocked the power of the mysterious sea in front of them, but it was quickly broken through. In a violent wave that filled the sky, Dao Venerable Qing Yi and Shoichi Dashin both groaned miserably. They had suffered serious injuries, and Dao Venerable Qing Yi, who was already seriously injured, was directly grabbed by a huge dragon claw formed by the seawater of the mysterious sea. But without the interference of Yin Xinghe's evil soul, Dao Venerable Qing Yi quickly used the Haotian Mirror to block the power of the mysterious sea. However, Dao Venerable Qing Yi's vital spirit had already been crushed by the huge dragon claw formed by the seawater. Dao Venerable Qing Yi, one of the 4 venerated elders of Taishu Temple, an expert in the Dharma-ending realm who had already started cultivating in the Middle Era, had fallen. Dao Venerable Qing Yi and Shoichi Dashin did not have the time to feel sorry for him. They could only bear the pain and roll up the other cultivators of Taishu Temple and rush out of the crack of the mysterious sea that was about to close again. At this time, Lin Feng also smashed the altar of the king of the underworld with a sword. Separated by the void realm channel, Lin Feng's gaze calmly looked at the rolling waves in the mysterious sea. He did not say anything else, and once again raised the sky-crushing sword in his hand. Fate Creation Boy, who was beside him, revealed the original form of the Fate Creation Bell. As the bell rang, it turned into the river of time and flowed around Yujing Mountain silently. His divine sense and Dharma power were all added to Lin Feng's body. The terrifying sword formation above Lin Feng's head was also activated. This was not formed by Lin Feng's Dharma power and sword will, but the original version, the real sky-crushing sword formation. As Lin Feng raised his sword this time, an even more ferocious and powerful Tao-destroying sword will emerge, causing the entire void of the universe to tremble and endless evil qi to gather. In the mysterious sea, although Dao Master Qing Yi was killed, the anger of Yuan Dragon King and Kunlun Dragon King could not be appeased. At this moment, when they saw Lin Feng take the initiative to attack, they could not help but let out a deafening roar. Their anger and fighting spirit completely erupted. They did not cut off the Void Realm channel created by Lin Feng. Instead, they roused the endless power of the mysterious sea to attack Lin Feng. Feeling the ferocious realm of destruction of the Great Way and creation from Lin Feng's sky-crushing sword, the mysterious sea also became violent. It was even more violent than when it injured the people in the Taishu Temple. Lin Feng's expression did not change as he slashed down with his sword. As the sword fell, not only did the mysterious sea in front of him shake, but the Ying Sea, the Star Sea, the Empty Sea, and the Underworld Sea were also shaken. What was even more terrifying was that the Spirit Sea, which seemed to be everywhere in the boundless thousand worlds, suddenly shook. The sky was full of flowing light, which was formed by the Great Way of heaven and earth. In the seven seas of Tianyuan, the mysterious and powerful Spirit Sea, which was even more powerful than the mysterious sea, was also shocked by the sword will of the sky-crushing sword. Lin Feng's third sword move shocked the six seas of Tianyuan. Tenryu Jin, didn't you change your temperament and want to concentrate on enduring? Then just endure it and stay in the profound sea for me. If you dare to leave the profound sea while I'm in the great thousand world, I'll kill you. Lin Feng's tone was casual. As he spoke, the terrifying sword that could destroy heaven and earth and destroy all Daos fell down, splitting the black sea that was flashing with golden light. The mysterious sea realm shook violently, as if it was going to be torn apart again. A muffled groan came from the sea, and in the space, golden dragon scales seemed to fall off and fall into the sea. Chapter 12:56. At that moment, on the surface of the Xianhai Sea, waves rolled continuously. The black seawater was still surging with towering waves, and golden light filled the entire world. In the air, spots of golden light floated down and sank into the Black Sea. They were golden dragon scales, the dragon scales of the ancient heavenly dragons. Looking from afar, they looked like specks of golden light against the backdrop of the boundless ocean. But in fact, each dragon scale was incomparably huge, with a circumference of an acre. Just a single dragon scale contained a vast amount of demonic energy. Those are the dragon scales that belong to the current leader of the dragon race. Tenryu General Lin Feng's powerful sword had forcefully broken through the power of the Xianhai Sea and sliced them off. At this moment, the surface of the Xianhai Sea was split into two halves. The seawater parted to the sides, revealing an abyss-like ravine. There was nothing in the ravine. There was no water, air, or anything else. It had been completely annihilated and returned to chaos. After Lin Feng's sword, the seawater gathered back into the ravine. The power of the boundaries surged to rebuild space, time, and matter, filling up the gap in the void. Meanwhile, the realm passage that Lin Feng had created through the primitive ancient formation had completely collapsed. The distorted void of the realm continued to spread, and the gap gradually closed up. The surface of the Xianhai Sea gradually calmed down, and the golden light on the black seawater also became much gentler. The damaged Xianhai Sea seemed to have recovered to normal after a series of fierce battles. However, be it the strong practitioners of the dragon race or Lin Feng, they could all feel that the power of the Xianhai Sea had fallen into a trough. It was no longer as mighty as it had been at its peak. Dragon roars rang out from the surface of the sea. That was the voice of Yuan Dragon King, but it also seemed a little weak. The current strongest practitioner of the dragon race had successfully survived the calamity and recovered from his weakened state. However, he couldn't even take a step out of the Xianhai Sea. There is no need to describe the anger and frustration in his heart. However, Lin Feng's third sword had made Yuan Dragon King know that if he left the protection of the Xianhai Sea, that terrifying power was not something he could withstand alone. There was no doubt about it. Beside Lin Feng, Mirage Sun Yudu, who was standing in the void, witnessed the power of Lin Feng's heaven punishment sword and had no choice but to admit this point. Lin Feng's third sword made Mirage Sun Yudu feel as though he had returned to over 4,000 years ago. He was facing his elder brother, the number one person in the history of Yudu race, the strongest expert of the current era, Yuan Tianhai. His gaze fell on the heaven-punishing sword in Lin Feng's hand. This peerless, ominous sword had been honed for many years. Today, it was tempered by Lin Feng with the power of the Dead Sea. After the second sacrificial offering, it had successfully advanced to the next level. It was now aiming for the throne of the king of heavenly origin magical treasures. Before the clear sky mirror recovered to its peak, the Sky Destroyer sword was undeniably the number one magical treasure in Tianyuan. Its power was unparalleled. Qingyuan, Jingyin, take Kong Yuan and the rest and retreat immediately. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a long sigh and gave the order. Previously, when their Yudu race had returned to the boundless world, Taiwan Mountain had collapsed by itself under their pressure. After that, they had attacked White Cloud Mountain and broken the 9 heavens of the Great Void Empire. Under the transmission of their power, they had almost destroyed the Great Qin Empire's capital, West Hill City. This made everyone in the Divine Land feel insecure and jittery. Even when Lin Feng had first arrived at White Cloud Mountain to support them, he was suppressed by Mirage Sun Yudu. Meanwhile, the other strong practitioners of Yudu fought until the remaining line of defense in Taishu Temple was on the verge of collapse. It was as though a massacre could happen at any time. However, in the blink of an eye, all of their advantages vanished like smoke in thin air. At this moment, it was time for Mirage Sun Yudu and the rest of the strong practitioners of Yudu race to think about how they could retreat under Lin Feng's sword. Qingyuan, Yudu, Jingyin, and the rest looked at Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and the rest, and they were all depressed. However, even if they were in the Divine Land, they could still clearly feel the terrifying sword force of Lin Feng. At this moment, they could only retreat helplessly. Lin Feng's gaze retracted from the crack of the mysterious sea that was gradually closing up. He said indifferently, "You want to leave now? How can it be so easy?" As he said that, Lin Feng raised his sword again. The ferocious will of world destruction shook the boundless world and the 6 seas of heaven's origin sector. Countless streams of light condensed and manifested by the great Tao of heaven and earth didn't even have time to wail before they were destroyed. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a long howl, and the 3 horns on his head flashed with black light markings. The black light markings gradually turned silver and condensed at the tip of the 3 horns to form 3 silver balls of light. These 3 silver balls of light gradually gathered together and blurred into a lump of light and shadow. The scene that appeared in the light and shadow was a dimensional world shrouded in black fog. In the depths of the black fog stood an incomparably huge city. That city was completely black, but it was flashing with silver light. The strong contrast was extremely glaring. This city had layers and layers that rose straight into the sky. It was vast and boundless. It was as though an incomparably huge mountain range had been hollowed out in the middle to build such a city. Silver-white light condensed in the city and rushed into the sky, breaking through the black fog and going straight into the void. It was Yudu Royal City. In Yudu Royal City stood a Yudu beast that was slightly smaller in size, but the waves of demonic power were extremely dense. It was a powerful Yudu beast that was no inferior to Qingyuan Yudu and Empty Plains Yudu. Mirage Sun Yudu said solemnly, "Shi Xing, it has been hard on you." His name was Shi Xing Yudu, another strong practitioner of the last days realm of the Yudu race. He revealed his true form in Yudu Royal City, and the markings on his body that were like starlight flashed continuously. He opened his mouth to spit out streams of light that were like essence blood. They scattered in the sky above Yudu Royal City before burning up, causing the silver-white light that shrouded Yudu Royal City to become even more dazzling. Countless silver light pierced through the world and descended into the void at this moment. They were received by the silver shadow above Mirage Sun, Yudu's head, to bless Mirage Sun Yudu's body. Mirage Sun Yudu gave a roar, and the demonic power on his body surged furiously again. A black, profound light shot out from the heart of his brows and shook the void of heaven and earth. An unprecedentedly powerful profound light burst forth, and a layer of silver light appeared on the surface of the black light. Countless stars rose and fell continuously. Lin Feng looked at Mirage Sun Yudu, who had guided the power of Yudu Royal City to bless himself. His expression was calm as usual, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He raised heaven-punishing sword high up in his right hand and pointed it at the sky. On Jade, Capital Mountain, the branches of the mystic heavenly treasures swayed continuously, and the seven-colored radiance fused with the chaotic light of the extreme of heaven that was hard to understand. They then poured into the purple chi of the heavens and transformed into auspicious clouds that were like jade. The long river of time that the bell of creation had manifested was interdependent with the mountains and waters of Jade, Capital Mountain, and its power endlessly blessed Lin Feng's body. Under the shroud of the jade-colored auspicious clouds, the life and death formation of heaven and earth also started to rotate and transform into boundless radiance. Above the life and death formation of heaven and death formation, the baleful aura was astonishing. Countless jet-black light swords formed an extremely ruthless and terrifying sword formation that gathered the malevolent aura of heaven and destroyed the world. It was none other than the heaven-punishing sword formation. The power of the sword formation completely fused with the heaven-punishing sword in Lin Feng's hand, and the power between them grew continuously. Black and white divine light shone around Lin Feng's body and transformed into countless clouds and mists that filled the void. It was as though countless gods had descended and were singing together. The boundless void of the universe was covered by the vortex formed by the malevolent aura. The void collapsed involuntarily, and the stars shattered into pieces. Even the boundaries between the void and the boundless world were gradually becoming blurry, as though they were heading towards the end of the road. The 5 seas, Mysterious Sea, Empty Sea, Netherworld Sea, Sanctuary Sea, and Star Sea, trembled together and created new waves. Meanwhile, the Spirit Sea that seemed to be everywhere transformed into a sky full of light that flickered continuously and was filled with hostility. Lin Feng's sword slashed down, and the malevolent aura vortex that covered the void was activated. Together, it transformed into a world-destroying blade that slashed towards Mirage Sun and Yudu. The ruthless blade even shrouded Green, Peak Yudu, and the other great demons of Yudu within it. The sword that seemed to want to destroy the creation of heaven and earth forcefully split apart Mirage Sun and Yudu's Yudu Xianhua that was strengthened by the power of Yudu Royal City. Countless black and silver lights seemed to raise a meteor shower that affected the entire universe. They flickered and shattered continuously, and countless starlight was destroyed. The brilliance of the great Tao withered. The broken horn of Yudu Emperor, Celestial Sea, flashed with purple light again, but the purple mist that it had transformed into was also instantly torn apart. Mirage Sun and Yudu gave a miserable grunt, and numerous wounds appeared on his body. One of the 3 horns on his head was sliced off. Silver fur that was like a ray of light floated everywhere in the void, and purple blood that was flashing with black markings filled the sky. The silver shadow above his head twisted violently, as though there were ripples spreading out on a calm surface. Above Yudu Royal City in the distant dimensional world, the black fog that shrouded it was split apart by the malevolent sword will. The majestic silver light that rushed into the sky shattered, and light rained down from the sky. Sure, Xingyo's body trembled violently, and light spread out from his body. Every pore on his body seemed to be spewing blood. As Mirage Sun and Yudu roared, he swept up Green Crest Yudu and the rest that had escaped from the Divine Land and escaped through the void. His body transformed into flowing light and rushed into the silver shadow above his head, escaping with extreme speed. However, his body suddenly stopped, and despair appeared on the face of Hollow Plain Yudu, who was captured by his demonic power. The ring on his finger flickered, and it attracted countless sword lights that had spread out in the surroundings to attack again. Mirage Sun and Yudu, who were suppressed by Lin Feng's sword force, couldn't protect Hollow Plain Yudu. They could only watch as Hollow Plain Yudu was pierced by countless sword lights. The elder of Yudu clan, whose abilities surpassed even those of the Great Sage and Kunlong King, was even older than Mirage Sun and Yudu. He was a great demon of Yudu in the Last Days realm, and Hollow Plain Yudu, but at that moment he was slain by Lin Feng. Lin Feng held the sword in his right hand, and with a sweep of his left hand, he fixed Hollow Plain Yudu and the ring in place. The tip of the sword continued to sweep and chase after Mirage Sun and Yudu through the silver shadow, rushing into the dimensional world. The world annihilation divine sword descended, and a corner of the huge Yudu royal city suddenly crumbled. The royal city of the ancestral land of Yudu clan, which was even stronger than Spirit Abyss Mountain Range, crumbled with one sword from Lin Feng. 12 Mirage, son of Yudu, when you have the ability of 11 heavenly seas of Yudu, come and find me. But you now can't do it. The world passage created by the silver shadow was completely destroyed, and Lin Feng's voice gradually dissipated in the sky above Yudu Royal City. However, it seemed to be ringing in the ears of all the Yudu beasts, and it was hair-raising. Chapter 12:57. The passage of light and shadow was completely destroyed, and the void collapsed. The Yudu race, from the current clan master, Huanri Yudu, all retreated to the medium-sized world where Yudu Royal City was. Empty Plains Yudu was slashed by Lin Feng's extermination swordwill, leaving only his corpse behind. The great demons of the Dharma-ending realm were one with heaven and earth, and their connection with the boundless world was extremely close. The slaying of any great demon of the Dharma-ending realm would shake heaven and earth. Although Empty Plains Yudu was limited by the ring and was in an extremely weak state, his slaying by Lin Feng also caused the boundless world to shake violently. The power of the boundaries twisted and shattered, as though a part of the boundless world was also injured by Lin Feng's sword, and it would take a long time for it to heal. Lin Feng opened his palm, and streams of purple chi floated out, sucking Empty Plains Yudu's corpse. He held the corpse of the great demon of the Dharma-ending realm in one hand and the heaven-punishing sword in the other, standing calmly in the void. He didn't say anything, but when he looked around, everyone in the world felt as though they were under the gaze of that calm gaze. A terrifying vortex of evil air covered the sky, and it circled above Lin Feng's head slowly, as though it was going to swallow the world. At that moment, above the vast land of infinite wasteland, the void broke open, and two huge figures appeared. They were originally escaping through the void and rushing towards the divine land, but now they stopped at the same time. One was a huge black ape with red eyes that seemed to be able to support heaven and earth. It was a giant white ape with 4 fiery red legs and eyes that shone with green light. They were the 2 strong demons of the Dharma-ending realm of the primordial devil ape race, the Great Sage and Great Sage Zhu Yan. The effect of the heaven-severing realm at the Spirit Abyss Mountain Range had ended, and the 2 great demons of the ape race were finally able to break free, killing their way out of the Spirit Abyss Mountain Range. However, they could clearly feel the terrifying sword aura of Lin Feng that could shake the boundless world, even in the vast land of infinite wasteland. The 2 demons couldn't help but stop at the same time. He swung his sword 4 times in a row. Every time he swung his sword, the expressions of the celestial reaching saint and the great Saint Zhuyin changed. Rage and resentment turned into shock and astonishment. Shock and astonishment turned into fear and dread and dread turned into frustration and helplessness. In the end, peace was restored. However, in this peace, there was a sense of loss and dejection, which was rare for the celestial reaching sage and Zhuyin great saint. Zhuyin the great sage laughed bitterly and turned to look at the great sage. Unless His Majesty Divine Abyss is resurrected, or if one of us can reach the level of His Majesty Divine Abyss in the past, we won't be able to get back at him. The great sage's face was as dark as still water. Scarlet light flickered in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. Great Saint Zhuyin looked at him and continued, "Not to mention revenge, the current spiritual abyss mountain is not strong enough to resist the attack of the celestial sect master alone. You and I have left the mountain now, and we can't even resist one sword of his." Hearing this, the great sage first snorted coldly, then looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. Then he turned around with a sullen face and broke through the void again, returning to the Spirit Abyss Mountain. "Children, quickly return to the Spirit Abyss Mountain. We can't stay here for a moment. All of you, return to the mountain immediately." Zhuyin, the great sage, shook his head and also let out a long sigh. He also turned into a stream of light, broke through the void, and returned to the Spirit Abyss Mountain. Finally, when the effect of the sky-severing boundary disappeared, they could go out and kill in all directions. The two experts of the primordial demonic ape clan, who had been suppressing their anger and resentment, could only return to the ancestral land with their tails between their legs. This feeling of crushing one's teeth and swallowing it down one's stomach was truly indescribable with words. But what made the omnipotent sage and the great sage Zhuyin even more furious was that at this moment, they were even secretly rejoicing in their hearts that the people who faced the peerless sharpness of Lin Feng's Heaven Destroyer sword after it was unsealed were the other demon race and human race powerhouses, and not the two of them. What was even more vexing was that they were still worried about how they could resist Lin Feng if he came to the Spirit Abyss Mountain again. For the great sage and Zhuyin, the great sage, the war between the two realms that almost affected the entire great heaven primordial world had already ended before they officially joined. Only they knew what was good or bad about it. However, compared to the demonic ape clan, the dragon clan in the mysterious sea was even more vexed and furious. Although they had killed Dao Master Qing Yi of the Taishu Temple and the ruler of the Great Qin Dynasty, Stonefeather, and caused the Great Qin Dynasty to lose the immortal Dragon City, it was hard to say that the Dragon Clan had gained any substantial benefit from the war between the two realms. On the contrary, the Yuan Dragon King was injured, the Blue Sky Dragon King died, and the Flame-Flowing Dragon King died. The other experts of the Dragon Clan, who were of lower realms, also died in large numbers. The vitality of the entire Dragon Clan was greatly damaged. The people who brought such heavy losses to them were Lin Feng and his subordinate, Xianmen Tianzhou. In addition to the ancestral crocodile great sage's death, the blow that Lin Feng and his disciple dealt to the Dragon Clan had far exceeded the sum of all the losses that the Dragon Clan had suffered in the past thousands of years after the war between the two realms. To the proud Dragon Clan, this made them furious, but there was nothing they could do. The sword that Lin Feng used to split the mysterious sea and injure the Yuan Dragon King made them realize that it was a power that was on par with the perfect Haoyan mirror. In fact, its attacking power might even be stronger. After Lin Feng's sword swept through the great heaven primordial world, even though the Dragon Clan was furious, they couldn't take the initiative to take revenge. Not only that, but Shunlong King, who had brought great pressure to Zhu Yi in the southern wasteland of the Divine Land, immediately retreated from the battle after Lin Feng split the mysterious sea and returned to Infinite Wasteland. Other than the Dragon Clan and the Primordial Devil Ape Clan, the three strongest demon clans in Infinite Wasteland, the Yudu clan also suffered heavy losses. The Yudu clan which had great ambitions to return to the boundless world, was known as the strongest demon clan. Ever since they appeared in the world, they had been crushing everything in their way. They were invincible, causing the entire divine land to tremble under their might. But in the end, the Yudu race suffered the most. Even though the only top-notch great demon that had truly fallen was Kong Yuan Yudu, he was a great demon on the last day's realm, and his battle prowess had already surpassed all the strong practitioners of the dragon race that had fallen. Even the Yudu race, which had many strong practitioners, was heartbroken because of this. But all the strong practitioners of Yudu, including Mirage Sun and Yudu, could only bear with it and secretly lick their wounds. On the White Cloud Mountain, Dao Venerable Xian Yi Kuang Heng, Lin Daoan, Dao Venerable Qing Ning, Fu Yunkong, and the others had regained their composure, but their gazes were extremely solemn. Everyone was silent. Above the divine land, Shi Tianhao, White Tiger Great Sage, and the others who had gotten rid of Yudu's pursuit felt the terrifying power in the endless void outside the myriad domains. Instead, they all smiled. Although Great Sage Lu Yuan was seriously injured and grimaced in pain, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. At the same time, he rejoiced in his heart. The depressed feelings of being captured and betrayed were completely swept away. He even felt that he had made an extremely wise decision. Silently standing beside Shi Tianhao, Chan Yubei Rong's gaze shifted between the endless void above his head and the direction of the White Cloud Mountain in the distance. He thought to himself, the divine land is really going to change this time. The same thought emerged in more than one person's mind at this moment. In the West Hill City, the new emperor of the Great Qin Dynasty, Shi Zongtong, and a group of strong practitioners of the Great Qin Dynasty sat in the somewhat dilapidated palace hall with extremely complicated expressions. In the heavenly Thunder Hall on the Purple Cloud Peak of the Thunder Mountain Range, where the mountain gate of the Purple Cloud Path was located, Dao Venerable Thundercloud, the pale and seriously injured Dao Venerable Blue Thunder, and the other elders of the Purple Cloud Path sat opposite each other. Dao Venerable Thundercloud stood up from his seat and said slowly, "The situation of the war between the two worlds has changed again. I don't need to stay here anymore. Send people from the sect to the vast land of infinite wasteland with me." Dao Venerable Blue Thunder and the others also stood up and nodded in agreement. Dao Venerable Thundercloud continued, "Senior Brother Blue Thunder, rest well. After this battle, I will personally go to the Kunlun mountain range." At the same time, Sword Venerable Tiangang, who had rushed back to the southern wilderness from Mount Shu, only had time to watch Shun Long King leave. Silently, he stood in the void, motionless like a statue. He didn't even need to look in the direction of White Cloud Mountain. As long as he looked up, he could feel the terrible chi of heaven and earth sweeping in the endless void, which seemed to cover the vast thousand worlds. Sword Venerable Tiangang was expressionless. His eyes were firm, and he didn't speak for a long time. Outside the great Kiliacosm, in a dimensional realm, there was a Buddha sitting in the void, surrounded by boundless Buddhist light. The Buddha's body was like glass, and he had 48,000 arms. When he opened his arms, there seemed to be a star flashing in the palm of each hand. The Buddha looked calm and expressionless, but if you looked closely, he seemed to be smiling. He looked into the distance, as if his eyes had passed through the endless void. His eyes were like flowing water. I don't know about this change. The master of the Xianmen is not from Tianyuan, and his sword is not from Tianyuan. What on earth? This Buddha was the future Buddha, the future star-glazed Buddha master. Even he had been paying attention to the progress of the war between the two worlds, and the result was far beyond his expectation. Years ago, when Lin Feng came to Mount Shu, he used his sky-crushing sword to destroy the immortal sky sword of Mount Shu, and finally succeeded in refining the sky-crushing sword. At that time, the sky-crushing sword shocked the entire divine land and even the vast thousand wasteland. It was recognized as the imperfect Haoyan mirror of the Taishu Temple. The mirror of the Taishu Temple and the sword of Xianmen Tianzong became the two most powerful treasures in the great Tianyuan world. However, on the day the sword was refined, the sky-crushing sword was sealed again by Lin Feng, and it had never been unsealed since. Strictly speaking, since the day the sky-crushing sword was refined, no one had truly seen its sharpness. This time, however, it was truly unsheathed for the first time. Lin Feng's four swords swept through heaven and earth. The first sword defeated the current clan master of the Yudu race, the strongest individual in the entire demon race, 12 Yudu, illusory sons. The second sword resolved the only chance for the dragon race and the king of the underworld to seize the Haotian mirror. It then traversed the two realms and the entire mysterious sea, nearly severing the bloodline of the king of the underworld. The third sword shook the mysterious sea, one of the seven seas of Tianyuan, which was controlled by the strong practitioners of the dragon race. It forcefully split the mysterious sea and injured the clan master of the dragon race, Tenryu Jin. The fourth sword fought the Yudu race again, slaughtering the empty Yudu, heavily injuring the 12 Yudu illusory sons, and destroying a corner of Yudu royal city. Lin Feng's four swords determined the fate of the human race in the war between the two worlds. Chapter 1258. Future constellation glazed Buddha Master's gaze flickered as he savored Lin Feng's peerless sword, which seemed to have destroyed heaven and earth, bringing the end of the world and the end of thousands of great Daos. In terms of destructive power and attack power, it had completely surpassed his current body, like when Gautama Buddha had entered the Dead Sea in the past. Such power had to be taken seriously by future constellation glazed Buddha Master, not to mention the past, present, and future of Lin Feng and the Heaven Punishment Sword. Even to him, it was a blur of chaos. The void split open, and a handsome young monk in gray walked out. He put his palms together and bowed to future constellation glazed Buddha Master. Greetings, Buddha. This young monk in gray was the great demon Golden Cicada, who had been in hiding for a long time. Golden Cicada sighed slightly and said, I thought there would be some time before the Master of Mystic Gate's sword reappeared. The situation was critical, and the Master of Mystic Gate would at most unseal his Heaven Punishment Sword in advance. Who would have thought that he would succeed at this time? Future constellation glazed Buddha Master said indifferently. Next, the situation changed by Yudu's return to the boundless world will be reversed again. Golden Cicada replied, Disciple will be careful. Future constellation glazed Buddha Master nodded. Golden Cicada, take Peacock and leave first. He had 48,000 arms, and one of them stretched out. He opened his palm, and a ball of light flew out. Within the ball of light, a white-robed monk was sitting cross-legged. 5-colored treasure light shone behind him, but the waves of power coming from him were demon power. However, the white-robed monk's palms formed a mudra, and Buddhist magic power flowed out continuously. Although it was still very weak and insignificant compared to the demon power, it was gradually growing. Even in human form, Golden Cicada could recognize him at a glance. This great demon was the strongest under Golden Rock Sage in the past, the first tribulation great demon, Great Sage Peafowl. This great demon's gaze was calm and peaceful, just like Golden Cicada. At this moment, he had actually converted to Buddhism and was practicing Dharma with future constellation glazed Buddha Master. Golden Cicada was not surprised by this. Great Sage Peafowl was meditating and cultivating and had no intention of stopping. He took the ball of light wrapped around Great Sage Peafowl from the future glazed Buddha Lord, then bowed to the future glazed Buddha Lord and said, Your disciple is going. With that, Golden Cicada turned into a beam of golden light and left this medium-class world. The future glazed Buddha Master of the future constellation looked tranquil. His eyes slowly closed as he pondered and deduced. Taishu Temple did not lose the Haotian mirror, but can no longer maintain the situation of two poles with Xianmen Tianzong. In the endless void, besides Lin Feng, there were no other enemies in front of him. The terrifying vortex of evil qi gradually disappeared. Lin Feng put away his sword and stood upright. His body shrunk, and he landed back on Mount Yujing. Mount Yujing returned to the Divine Land. Although the sharp blade that seemed to hang high above the universe had temporarily disappeared, the situation in the great heaven primordial world was completely different. The Yudu race was defeated by Lin Feng. The primordial celestial dragon race could only defend the Xianhai Sea. The primordial demon ape race retreated to the spirit abyss mountain range, and the three strongest races of infinite wasteland retreated in defeat. The strong humans of the Divine Land began to blow the horn to counterattack. Although Lin Feng stayed in the Divine Land, under the leadership of the cultivators of Xianmen Tianzong, the strong humans stirred up a frenzy that swept across infinite wasteland. In the past, the Divine Land was in short supply, but infinite wasteland was rich in resources that were beneficial for the human race to refine artifacts and elixirs, or to assist in cultivation. These resources were collected by the human cultivators. Many of the medium-class worlds and foreign lands that were originally occupied by the demon race were also occupied by the human cultivators. The Heavenly Sword Sect, Thunderbolt Sword Sect, Celestial Sword Sect, and other sword sect had suffered heavy losses due to the change in the immortal heaven of great beginning sword formation. Now, they were collecting materials wantonly to make up for their losses. The Great Qin Empire did the same, following closely behind to counterattack Infinite Wasteland. As the three strongest races retreated, the other demon races retreated step by step. It wasn't hard for them to make a choice between keeping their people and losing their land or losing both. In this war between the two worlds, the biggest change wasn't just in the fight for resources. Infinite Wasteland wasn't really barren. It was just that the flow of spirit qi wasn't suitable for human cultivators, but more suitable for the demon race. However, powers like Xianmen Tianzong, Purple Cloud Dao, Northern Militant Royal Court, and the Great Zhou Empire all began to forcefully seize some grotto heavens and treasure lands on Infinite Wasteland. These powers all had strong practitioners with sufficient cultivation and resources to try to change the environment of a particular treasure land. After a certain period of time, these places could be turned into blessed lands suitable for human cultivators to cultivate. In the past, the problem with the establishment of these grotto heavens and treasure lands wasn't how to change them, but how to defend them in the future. Therefore, apart from Taishu Temple's Taihua Mountain and Xianmen Tianzong, Tianhao's Infinite Wasteland Villa, no one else could occupy land in Infinite Wasteland. At the same time, Taihua Mountain and Infinite Wasteland Villa also made their own preparations just in case. Taihua Mountain and White Cloud Mountain were connected by a stable realm passage, so that White Cloud Mountain could reinforce Taihua Mountain at any time. It was only when Yudu descended during the war between the two worlds that the realm passage was destroyed by Taishu Temple. Tianhao's Infinite Wasteland Villa wasn't far from the entrance of the realm passage leading to the Divine Land in Infinite Wasteland. Back then, they had occupied this territory right under the nose of the demon race. They had originally planned to use it as bait in the war between the two worlds. It was just that the direction of the war between the two worlds had changed after the war between the two worlds. Now, with the victory of the human cultivation world in the war between the two worlds, the various powers began to occupy the blessed lands and grotto heavens in Infinite Wasteland. With Lin Feng holding the fort, the strong practitioners of the demon race could only grit their teeth and bear with it before they could defend themselves. It wasn't just the places occupied by Xianmen Tianzong. If the powers that were on good terms with Xianmen Tianzong were to be attacked by the demon race, it was very likely that they would attract Xianmen Tianzong's help or even revenge. Even the three great demon races, Yudu, Heaven Dragon, and Devil Ape, had to think twice before acting. Under the pressure of the human cultivation world, the demon race, led by the three great races, finally began to gradually unite. In a situation where there was no Saint Emperor of the demon race to command, this could be said to be unprecedented. Green Crest Yudu led a portion of the strong practitioners of the Yudu race to descend on Infinite Wasteland and occupy a blessed land. Among the strong practitioners of the dragon race, Kunlun Dragon King came from the mysterious sea to meet with Green Crest Yudu. The great sage of the primordial devil ape race stayed in the spirit abyss mountain range, while great sage Zhu Yin also hurried there. With the second in command of the three great demon races gathered, the advancement of the human cultivation world slowed down. Sun Mirage, Yudu, Yuan Long King, and the great sage didn't act rashly. Lin Feng also remained on Yujing Mountain, floating in the sky of the divine land. Both sides gradually formed a tacit understanding, and the most intense and cruel frontal battle of the war between the two worlds gradually came to an end. They entered the follow-up stage of the war, where both sides intertwined and clashed continuously. However, the human race pushed forward greatly, placing the battlefield completely on infinite wasteland. The territory ruled by the demon race was greatly reduced. In the process of occupying the blessed land and grotto heavens of infinite wasteland, the other human forces began to gradually lean towards Xianmen Tianzong. Lin Feng's deterrence was unparalleled at the current stage. However, at this stage of the war, many people had other ideas. From the Heavenly Sword sect, the Heavenly Sword Venerable and Old Sword Immortal came to infinite wasteland at the same time. The Heavenly Sword Venerable looked down at the beautiful spirit mountain occupied by the Heavenly Sword sect. Silently, he said, "The heaven-punishing sword of the Master of Xianmen is a sword that can destroy the world. It's unimaginable to wield this sword without being injured by its edge. Now it seems that the Master of Xianmen has a limit when wielding this sword. He can't use it too many times in a row." Upon hearing his words, Old Sword Immortal nodded. That terrifying sword intent, just feeling its existence is enough to make one feel fear. It's like seeing the destruction of the great Heaven Yuan world. To be honest, apart from the Master of Xianmen, I really can't think of anyone who can wield this sword. That sword is different from the Haotian mirror. It's not something that can be wielded with a high enough cultivation. The Heavenly Sword Venerable said, "That's right. Furthermore, even if the Master of Xianmen has a limit, no one can control that sword once he breaks through it. The Master of Xianmen will suffer a backlash, and his enemies will also suffer. Dying together is already the best outcome. However, the problem is that no one knows where the limit is. It's very likely that they will be killed by the Master of Xianmen in vain." The Old Sword Immortal laughed bitterly. The Master of Xianmen is unfathomable. His strength is unfathomable. Anyway, I definitely don't believe that 4 swords is his limit. The Heavenly Sword Venerable said, "Of course not. The Haotian mirror is still in the hands of the Taishu Temple." The Old Sword Immortal suddenly sighed. Even if the Haotian mirror is still in the hands of the Taishu Temple, it's difficult for them to compete with Xianmen Tianzong now. They can only defend their own sect. If they can wait until the Haotian mirror returns to perfection, they might still have the strength to fight. However, who can say for sure what will happen in the future? Just like before, no one had expected that Xianmen Tianzong could actually reach such a height in such a short period of time. The Heavenly Sword Venerable's expression was calm. His eyes flickered slightly, but he had no intention of objecting. At this moment on the vast land of the Divine Land, almost everyone had the same thought. The Taishu Temple, which had dominated the throne of the #1 sect in the Divine Land for countless years, was finally surpassed by a new force at this moment. Even if it was only at this moment, and the future was hard to predict, no one could deny this fact. The throne of the #1 sect in the Divine Land now belonged to Xianmen Tianzong. On the Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng sat calmly on the top of the Xian Tian Treasure's branch. The heaven-punishing sword that everyone feared and revered had now reverted back to the appearance of Xian Li, standing silently behind Lin Feng. At that moment, a system notification sounded in Lin Feng's mind. Chapter 1259. In the vast thousand domains, whether it was the human clan or the demon clan, they were all amazed by the strength of Xianmen Tianzong. Meanwhile, on Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng heard a system notification. Congratulations to the host for completing the main mission 2. 3. The special reward for the main mission has been released. Lin Feng smiled and did not say much. As usual, after the previous main mission was completed, the system would issue a new main mission. The previous main mission 2 was to have a total of more than 1,000 disciples within 50 years. Among them, cultivators in the Yuanying period must account for 1%, cultivators in the Golden Elixir period must account for at least 10%, and cultivators in the Foundation Establishment period must account for at least 39%. When he was in Lingyuan Mountain, Lin Feng submitted the mission. Because he had far exceeded the quota, he received 2 special rewards for the main mission at one time. One was the heaven-severing sealed realm, and the other was the primordial golden lamp. At that time, a new main mission was also issued. However, Lin Feng did not pay attention to it at that time. Instead, he focused on dealing with the war between the 2 realms. Main mission 2. 3. Dominate the peak and suppress the current generation mission description. Congratulations to the host for establishing a high reputation in the Great Tianyuan world, cultivating a large number of outstanding disciples, and stabilizing the fate of a holy land. The foundation of the sect has been solid, the branches are flourishing, and the vitality is flourishing. It is time to stride towards the peak, to become the #1 sect throughout the ages. The first step is to become the publicly recognized #1 sect and holy land in the Great Tianyuan world. Complete the magnificent feat of suppressing the current generation and leading the group. Mission time limit, 300 years. If the mission is not completed within the time limit, the special reward for the main mission will be cancelled. This was the latest main mission that Lin Feng had received at that time. Now, the notification sound in his ears indicated that he had completed this mission just now. Compared to the time limit of 300 years, the time Lin Feng used this time was so short that it was almost negligible. It wasn't that the mission was too simple. From the content of the mission, ever since the Taishu Temple ascended to the throne of the #1 Holy Land sect in the Divine Land in ancient times, until today, countless years had passed through the Ancient Era, the Middle Era, and the current Ancient Era. No one had been able to replace its position. At the intersection of the Ancient Era and the Middle Era, when the Elysium was at its peak, it once showed a momentum and strength that overshadowed the Taishu Temple at that time. However, as the Elysium quickly declined from its peak, this point could not be verified in time. Hence, it became a big doubt in the Divine Land forever. Because of this, the Taishu Temple had been sitting on the throne of the #1 Holy Land in China until today. After the Battle of Mount Shu and before the war between the 2 realms, Lin Feng commanded Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple as an equal. They were known as the 2 poles of China. However, even Lin Feng himself did not think that it was better than Taishu Temple. No matter how he felt about that place, its strength was strong and its foundation was deep. Lin Feng had always tried to overestimate it. However, as the war between the 2 realms progressed, everything changed. Not only was the Heaven Punishment Sword successfully sealed once again, allowing the strength of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong to directly overwhelm the Haoyan Mirror's Taishu Temple, which had yet to fully recover. After the war between the 2 realms, the reputation and prestige of Xianmen Tianzong had once again increased by leaps and bounds. It became the undisputed #1 in the Divine Land. During the course of the war, the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong rose strongly and played a key role in one local battlefield after another. What was even more eye-catching was that in the war between the 2 realms, almost all the top-notch great demons of the demon race that had fallen were killed by the strong practitioners of Xianmen Tianzong. The great sage Zhu Jian, a great demon at the first tribulation stage, was killed by Lin Feng's 3rd disciple, Wang Lin, in the Yingxi. The strong practitioner of the dragon race at the union of stars and souls as one, Flame Dragon King Lu Yan, was killed by Lin Feng's 2nd disciple, Zhu Yi, in the Infinite Wasteland. The Blue Sky Dragon King, who is only one step away from the Last Days realm, After enduring sword venerable celestial dipper's last day's tribulation and falling into a weakened state, he bore the pressure of the Kuan Dragon King for Lin Feng's second disciple Zhu Yi, breaking through the mysterious sea, summoning ritual, and killing him on the infinite wasteland. The great demon at the last day's realm of Yudu clan, Empty Yudu, was personally killed by Lin Feng in the outer realm. The great sage of the Golden Rock at the first tribulation stage. Although he had fallen in the hands of the enchantress, the crucial point was that the Yudu skeleton he used to intimidate others was destroyed by Lin Feng in the Divine Land. That was why the enchantress could attack him without fear. Other than that, the most mysterious great demon at the last days, the enchantress, was forced to self-destruct. Although he didn't die, he had no choice but to withdraw from the war between the two realms. At the same time that he crippled the enchantress, Lin Feng also trapped the two strong practitioners of the ancient devil ape race, the Great Sage and Zhu Yin Great Sage, in Spirit Abyss Mountain. They couldn't interfere in the war between the two realms. Yudu clans Zhanming Yudu, Ningfeng Yudu, and Wanlong Yudu were severely injured by White Tiger Great Sage, who was under the command of Lin Feng's seventh disciple, Shi Tianhao, and Xianmin Tianzong. If it wasn't for Green Crest Yudu, Jingyin Yudu, and the other strong practitioners of Yudu, they wouldn't have escaped their fate of being captured and killed. When the war between the two realms came to an end, everyone looked back. Xianmin Tianzong's glorious achievements shook the entire heaven primordial world. In fairness, other than Xianmin Tianzong, the role that Taishu Temple played in the war between the two realms couldn't be ignored. Even if they didn't achieve any results, and even lost Dao Venerable Qing, Yi, and Yin Nan Lai, two big shots, the role that Taishu Temple played in the war between the two realms couldn't be erased. From the moment the war broke out, Taishu Temple had always been under the most direct pressure. They went deep into the dragon race's ancestral land, the mysterious sea, to fight the strong practitioners of the dragon race. After the Yudu clan returned to the boundless world, White Cloud Mountain was also their main target. Taishu Temple resisted the pressure, and Xianmin Tianzong swept through. This was the true portrayal of the early stage of the war between the two realms. The Divine Land even had the upper hand at that time. However, as the Yudu clan returned to the boundless world, the king of the underworld suddenly appeared and shook the Haotian mirror out of everyone's expectations. This changed the situation, and the Divine Land no longer had the upper hand. During this time, the strong practitioners of the dragon race came out of the mysterious sea. Mount Shushan erupted in internal strife, and the enchantress and the primordial devil ape race became restless. Yudu first broke through Taiwa before descending upon the white clouds. In the war between the two realms, the advantage of the human cultivation world immediately became a disadvantage. Thus, in the middle of the war between the two realms, the main melody of the Divine Land became Taishu Temple continuing to resist the pressure, and Xianmin Tianzong putting out fires everywhere. As the Yudu clan grew stronger, and the king of the underworld was getting closer and closer to seizing the Haotian mirror, the Taishu Temple that was resisting the pressure finally collapsed step by step. To the cultivators of the human race, the war between the two realms was also sliding towards the abyss of failure. However, it was also at this time that the entire Xianmin Tianzong attacked and truly turned the tide. Even though Emperor Qin Stonefeather had fallen and Immortal Dragon City had disappeared, the second disciple under Lin Feng, Zhu Yi, still worked together with Big Dipper Sword Venerable of Mount Shushan to resist the pressure from Kuan Dragon King and kill Jade Sky Dragon King. They also defended the southern borders firmly, stopping the strong practitioners of the dragon race from the mysterious sea from advancing any further. Meanwhile, the eldest disciple under Lin Feng, Xiao Yin, forcefully quelled the internal strife of Mount Shushan. The seventh disciple, Shi Tianhao, guarded the isolated and helpless West Hill city that was about to be destroyed, stopping the great demons of Yudu that were chasing after Taishu Temple Monastery Master Yin Nanlai. Lin Feng himself, at the most critical moment, used his 4 swords to rule the world and slashed through the mysterious sea, resolving the hopes of the dragon race and the king of the underworld to seize the Hautian mirror. He almost wiped out the entire bloodline of the king of the underworld, intimidating the strong practitioners of the mysterious sea so that they didn't dare to act recklessly. He even repelled the strongest race of Heaven Wasteland, the Yudu race. In the final battle, Lin Feng almost used his own power to forcefully turn the tide of the battle, shattering the tide that was about to drown the divine land. After the Heaven Punishment Sword was unsealed, even Mirage Sun, Yudu, and Yuan Long King weren't a match for Lin Feng. This also caused the prestige of Lin Feng and Xianmin Tianzong to reach a whole new level. As time went by, no matter if it was in terms of power, prestige, or the role that they had played in the war between the two worlds, Xianmin Tianzong surpassed the Taishu Temple and became the #1 sect and sacred ground of the Divine Land. Compared to the long period of time, compared to the various powerful sects that had appeared in the history of the Divine Land, 300 years was an incomparably short period of time. Even the Heavenly Gate back then had taken thousands of years to reach its peak before it was destroyed. In the past, if someone was said to be able to suppress the current world in 300 years, the entire Divine Land and even the entire Heaven Primordial world would treat it as a joke. But now, everything had become reality, and it didn't even take 300 years. Not long after Lin Feng completed the original main mission, he directly crushed the new main mission. The time limit of 300 years was directly crushed. The heavy accumulation from before finally started to show its power at this moment, bursting forth with a loud bang. Lin Feng opened his palm, and a ball of light appeared on his palm. When the light dissipated, it turned out to be a small and exquisite black pagoda. This thing is a little interesting. Lin Feng weighed the small black pagoda in his hand, tried to figure out its use, and feeling its power. A faint smile appeared on his face. With the early completion of the main mission 2, 3, the system beep sounded in Lin Feng's mind again. Latest main mission 3, 1 released. Lin Feng opened the mission description and looked at the latest main mission. Main mission 3. 1. Above the Vault of Heaven, proud of the world mission description. Congratulations to the host for leading the sect to become the #1 in the current world. The host has taken a crucial and glorious step in the construction of the sect's eternal foundation. But being #1 in the current world doesn't mean being #1 in history. Above the peak, you can see the Vault of Heaven. Above the Vault of Heaven, you can look down on the past and the present. From today onwards, the host please lead the sect on the path to become the #1 sect in the history of the Heaven Primordial world and finally be proud of the past and the present. Mission time limit, 1,000 years. If the mission is not completed within the time limit, the special reward for the main mission will be canceled. Lin Feng looked at the mission description and pondered for a moment. Although I have indeed surpassed the Taishu Temple, the advantage isn't great enough. But that's not the key. The key is that being invincible in one-on-one battles doesn't mean being invincible in everything. From now onwards, be it the Divine Land or the Infinite Mainland, everyone should have their eyes on me, right? Lin Feng's mind was very clear, but his expression was relaxed, and his lips curled into a faint smile. Chapter 1260. Just as Lin Feng thought, right now, in the entire Heaven Primal world, be it the human clan or the demon clan, all the forces' gazes were focused on him and the celestial sect of wonders. Any small movement between him and Xianmin Tianzong would be fine if no one knew about it. But once it was known, there would be all sorts of interpretations and conjectures that would affect the judgment and decisions of countless people. Xianmin Tianzong's strength had changed slightly, and the people outside were even more sensitive than Xianmin Tianzong's own disciples. For a long period of time, the human cultivation world of the Divine Land only received such treatment from Taishu Temple. And now, even though the other powers still wouldn't ignore the Void Temple's every move and pay close attention to it, but the priority of paying attention to it would fall behind the celestial sect of wonders. Even the Void Temple had to pay close attention to every move of the celestial sect of wonders at this moment, paying attention to it with an even more cautious and attentive attitude than before. In this war between the two worlds, Taishu Temple could be said to have gained nothing and even suffered heavy losses. One of the four elders of the Great Void, Tao Venerable Qing Yi, and the current temple master, Yin Nanlai, were dead. Tao Venerable Taiwan, Shoichi Dashin, and Tao Venerable Xianwan were all injured. The Great Void, Nine Heavens Imperial Court, was breached by the Yudu race. Although White Cloud Mountain wasn't destroyed, its vitality was greatly damaged. Yin Yuanjin, Xianlin Taoist, and many other Grand Elders were also injured. After this war, Taishu Temple was at its weakest moment after entering the present era. Looking at the history of Taishu Temple, it was also one of its lowest times. As Lin Feng's Four Swords decided the outcome of this war, the Divine Land started to launch a counterattack, taking over cities and territories in Heaven Wasteland continent, gaining the upper hand. Taishu Temple didn't join in this counterattack. They only occupied Taiwan Mountain again and started to operate again. They were extremely low-key for the rest of the time. In this victorious counterattack of the human cultivation world, they seemed abnormally different. After Tao Venerable Taiwan, Shoichi Dashin, and the rest returned to White Cloud Mountain, they didn't go out. Many people felt that the Void Temple's actions were inexplicable, although they did not obtain any solid results, and even suffered heavy losses. The pressure that the Void Temple had endured in this war between the two worlds, as well as the contributions that they had made, still existed objectively. Now that things had finally turned for the better, Taishu Temple instead kept a low profile. Such a method of giving without asking for anything in return was completely different from Taishu Temple style in the past wars. If it was said that in the face of the celestial sect of wonders who had turned the tide in this war and led the group, it did not seem to be the case. Many people couldn't help but mutter in their hearts at the abnormal behavior, and some people also fell into deep thought. And at this moment, within White Cloud Mountain, within the Void Temple, a portion of the middle and low-level Void Temple cultivators also found this hard to understand and even felt indignant. Tao Venerable Taiwan was sitting cross-legged in the open space at the top of White Cloud Mountain. His eyes were closed, and his face was slightly pale. On the open space at the top of White Cloud Mountain, Tao Venerable Taiwan sat cross-legged. His eyes were closed, and his face was slightly pale. A mysterious and ethereal mirror light finally returned to the sky above White Cloud Mountain. Silently, white clouds gathered and shrouded White Cloud Mountain. Beside Tao Venerable Taiwan sat a white-haired old man and a handsome young man. They were Shoichi Dashin and Tao Venerable Xianwan. However, both of them looked a little pale. Like Tao Venerable Taiwan, they were injured, especially Tao Venerable Xianwan. Opposite them sat the other members of Taishu Temple's Grand Supreme Elders Guild. Kuang Heng and Fu Yunkong were projected there with their dermic powers. Their real bodies were at Taiwan Mountain in Infinite Wilderness. In addition to the members of Grand Supreme Elders Guild, Lin Daoan was also present. Black-Scale Dragon King and Flaming Cloud Dragon King, the leaders of the dragon race in the Supreme Dragon Pool, weren't present. In the war between the two worlds, as long as they weren't enemies of the dragon race, they would follow the strong practitioners of Taishu Temple to fight the other demons. This time, Black-Scale Dragon King and Flaming Cloud Dragon King naturally wouldn't follow them into the mysterious sea. Instead, they stayed behind to guard White Cloud Mountain. However, no matter if it was Mirage Sun Yudu, Green Crest Yudu, Empty Plain Yudu, or the other strong practitioners of the Yudu race, they were far from what they could fight with their union of Star and Soul. When the two great Dragon Kings came out, they would only provoke the strong practitioners of union of Star and Soul of Yudu race to fight. They were powerless to fill the gap in the Supreme Void Yin-Yang Great Formation, so they could only hide under the protection of the formation and White Cloud Mountain with the other cultivators of Taishu Temple with lower cultivation. When all the defensive methods were broken by the Yudu race and they faced the last moment of close combat, only then would the dragons in the Supreme Dragon Pool come out to fight. Before that, they, who had no place to use their abilities, could only wait awkwardly. This time, they didn't attend the meeting because there was a special matter that the Grand Supreme Elders Guild of Taishu Temple had to deal with. It would decide who the new Taishu Temple Monastery Master would belong to after Yin Nanlai died. Dao Venerable Tai One closed his eyes and looked at Lin Daohan in front of him. He slowly said, "Daohan, the situation has changed beyond everyone's expectations. The heavy burden will be placed on you in advance." Lin Daohan knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Dao Venerable Tai One. "Disciple understands. I will definitely do my best." Beside him, Dao Venerable Qing Ning, Dao Venerable Yu Yuan, Fu Yunkong, Yin Yuanjin, and Kai Feng Zhou all had calm expressions. Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, and Wu Mengqi's expressions didn't change at all. After Shoichi Dashin, Kuang Heng was the bigwig with the highest cultivation and the most experience in the radical faction. For his main body to go to Heaven Wasteland Vastland at this time was equivalent to expressing the radical faction's attitude. Even though the top strong practitioners of Taishu Temple, Dao Venerable Qing Yi and Yinan Lai, were both bigwigs of the conservative faction, losing them would cause the power of the conservative faction in Taishu Temple to drop. However, in the current environment of the Divine Land, if Taishu Temple were to create internal chaos, it would be suicidal. Dao Venerable Tai One tapped his finger gently, and a mysterious rune that was flashing with light appeared in midair. It was the symbol of the inheritance of the Taishu Temple Monastery Master, the Great Void Inscription. After Yin Nanlai died, the Great Void Inscription separated from him and returned to White Cloud Mountain. After Dao Venerable Tai One and the others brought the Haoyi Mirror back to White Cloud Mountain, they used the power of the Haoyi Mirror to repair the Great Void Inscription that was on the verge of breaking. Looking at the Great Void Inscription, Lin Daohan's usually calm eyes wavered slightly, and sorrow flashed across them. Then, he returned to normal. He raised the back of his left hand, and the Great Void Inscription floated over and landed on it. The mirror light fell from the top of the mountain, shrouding Lin Daohan and the Great Void Inscription under the light. In the light, Lin Daohan's figure disappeared, and only his voice was heard. "Disciple Lin Daohan will inherit the will of the past patriarchs and do my best." The Haotian mirror shook at this moment, and its light spread out, illuminating the vast thousand worlds. In the sky above the top of the mountain, a huge light ball that seemed illusory yet real appeared again. It was divided into 9 layers, and it was the 9 Heavens Imperial Court. At the top of White Cloud Mountain, Kuang Heng, Dao Venerable Qing Ning, and Wu Mengqi all bowed towards the light at this moment, Temple Master. Even Dao Venerable Tai One, Shoichi Dashin, and Dao Venerable Xian One lowered their heads slightly at this special moment, Temple Master. On White Cloud Mountain, all the disciples of Taishu Temple looked up at the top of the mountain and then bowed together. After the ceremony, the 9 Heavens Imperial Court disappeared, but the mirror light that shrouded Lin Daohan did not dissipate, and his whole body was still wrapped in the light. Slowly, Dao Venerable Tai One asked, "Daohan, what's your first decision?" Lin Daohan's voice came from the light. "Even though I won't seal the mountain, my temple will once again enter a state of seclusion. Restoring the Haotian mirror will be our top priority, and at the same time, we will recuperate." Hearing Lin Daohan's decision, Dao Venerable Tai One nodded slightly. Other than Dao Venerable Xian One, Fu Yunkong, and the rest, Shoichi Dashin, Kuang Heng, and the rest of the radical faction also nodded. If the Taishu Temple doesn't recover completely, it will be hard for my temple to compete with the heaven-punishing sword of the master of Xianmen. Silently, Shoichi Dashin said, "It's true that he turned the tide in this war between the 2 worlds and helped our divine land obtain victory. but his sword is too unconventional. Even he himself can't control that sword. Once he loses control, there will be endless troubles. After a moment of silence, Tao Venerable Xian once said, "Before his heaven-punishing sword is sealed again, I observed his battle with Mirage Sun and Yudu." The concept of the Tao, skills, and concepts seem to have merged the cultivation methods of the human race and the demon race. There shouldn't be any mistake. Silently, Tao Venerable Tai once said, "I have to admit that even though my temple entered the mysterious sea because of the master of Xianmen, the master of Xianmen and Xianmen Tianzong under his rule played a decisive role in today's victory for the divine land in this war between the two worlds. But he's too dangerous. Once he makes a mistake, in a situation where no one can control him, his destructive power will far surpass the evil of the underworld. We have to nip it in the bud." Lin Daohan said softly, "Even if the Haotian mirror recovers completely, it will only be a situation where we are on equal footing. Any movement between us and Xianmen Tianzong will affect the situation as a whole, and in the end, the demon race will only take advantage of it. The only opportunity to change the current stalemate lies in the spiritual sea." Tao Venerable Tai Wan and the others all nodded. Since the spiritual sea had been reopened, Lin Feng naturally would not just stand by and watch. But he could not bring his heaven-punishing sword into the spiritual sea. Otherwise, he would be rejected and attacked by the spiritual sea. Lin Feng must also have the intention of subduing the spiritual sea. Even if he had the heaven-punishing sword in hand and was not afraid of the power of the spiritual sea, in the face of the extreme hostility of the spiritual sea, he did not need to do anything else. He could only focus on resisting the attacks of the spiritual sea. Subduing the spiritual sea was completely out of his business. On the contrary, because of him and the heaven-punishing sword, it was possible that others could refine the spiritual sea for nothing. Back then, when Shoichi Dashin and Lin Feng fought over Ding of Shenzhou, the embarrassing encounter was a lesson learned. And without the heaven-punishing sword, even if the Haotian mirror did not fully recover, the Taishu Temple had the confidence to directly start a war with Lin Feng. "Before that, we can only wait," Shoichi Dashin said indifferently, silently. Chapter 1261. Wu Mengqi said quietly, "The spiritual sea is our chance, but the master of the Xianmen Gate will definitely notice it. Maybe he will take action in advance to weaken our temple and other competitors. We have to prevent him from causing trouble." Tao Venerable Xian, he shook his head. "Although I don't know where his limit is, he can't use his sword without limit. The Haotian mirror hasn't recovered fully, but has returned to White Cloud Mountain with senior brother Tai and senior brother Jingyi. Even if the master of Xian Gate comes, we can't humiliate him. The attention of the Yudu clan, the primordial heavenly dragon clan, and even the primordial devil ape clan is on him. If he fights with us, it will only benefit the demon race. The master of Xian Gate won't make such a low-level mistake." He paused for a moment and looked at Wu Mengqi. "But it's unavoidable to restrict our power from other aspects. The most likely target is the Netherworld Sea. His eldest disciple, Xiao Yan, has a close connection with Heaven's calamity in the Netherworld Sea, so he has a greater advantage." Wu Mengqi looked gloomy, but he didn't say anything. Shoichi Dashin said, "From the actions of the war between the two worlds, Lin Feng has completely entrusted this matter to his disciple, Xiao Yan. With Xiao Yan's power, even if he has a close connection with Heaven's calamity, it won't be easy for him to refine Heaven's calamity in the Netherworld Sea. Mengqi, you don't have to take the initiative to attack. Just defend your position. If you fall into a prolonged stalemate, you will succeed." As junior brother Xian Yi said, "Even if Lin Feng has wild ambitions, he won't start a war with us easily." Wu Mengqi nodded. Disciple understands. No matter if it was Shoichi Dashin or Wu Mengqi, they were both radical elders of Taishu Temple. However, being radical didn't mean that they didn't know how to judge the situation and adapt to the situation. Kuang Hung and Xianlin Taoist, who were standing at the side, were calm as usual, and there was not the slightest fluctuation in their eyes. Lord Yuan said coldly, "Although we need to recuperate, Xianmin Tianzong will definitely not sit back and watch us return to the peak. Even if they don't really start a war, they will still suppress and weaken us in other aspects. Our temple needs to react in time and counterattack. Even if we temporarily hide our strength and bide our time, we need to be fully prepared. We can't be held hostage by others." At this time, Kuang Hung, who looked like a child but had eyes as bleak as water, faintly said, "Find something else for Xianmin Tianzong to do, lest they keep their eyes on me." Dao Master Qingning's expression changed slightly. "Junior brother Kuang, you mean?" Lord Tai and Shoichi Dashin both looked at Kuang Hung and Lord Qingning. Beside them, Lord Xian explained and said softly, "At that time, it was Nanlai's decision." I agreed. Kuang Heng's expression was indifferent. He turned to look at Yin Yuanjin, who had yet to recover from his serious injuries, and looked dispirited. "Junior Sister Yin, your previous arrangements will have to be used in another way." Yin Yuanjin's aura was a little weak, but her eyes were still calm. Hearing this, she nodded, "I understand." Dao Master Qingning said in a deep voice, "I hope it will be of sufficient use." At this moment, in a corner of infinite wilderness, a majestic palace flashing with purple and gold light stood in the sky, like a nine heavens immortal palace. There were layers of light and shadows above the palace, as if thousands of immortals and Buddhas were constantly shuttling between the palaces and pavilions. Outside the immortal palace, cultivators were constantly coming and going, transporting a large number of resources that had been plundered from all over infinite wilderness to the purple and gold palace. A middle-aged man in a dragon robe with a dignified aura sat in the palace. He was the ruler of the Great Zhou dynasty, Emperor Zhou Yangpan. This palace was naturally the creation magic treasure, Grand Imperial Palace. In the palace, King Yin Liang of the Great Zhou dynasty, Liang Fu, stood below Emperor Zhou Yangpan and said softly, "Your Majesty, basically all the valuable resources in the vicinity have been collected." Liang Pan nodded. "Well done." Liang Fu bowed and did not say anything else. Liang Pan asked calmly, "Do you think it's a pity?" "Although it's a pity, I understand your Majesty's painstaking efforts." Liang Fu sighed. "Although it's a great opportunity to expand our territory, the Great Zhou dynasty has already occupied infinite wilderness. It's just an enclave that takes up a lot of energy." Emperor Zhou Yangpan said, "Yes, that's right. Moreover, in terms of expansion, what can compare to the Great Zhou dynasty's westward expansion and the Great Qin dynasty's territory under our rule?" He stood up from the dragon throne and walked past King Yin Liang to the entrance of the palace. He looked at the vast land in front of him. "But now that we've failed, there's nothing more to say. The key lies in the future." King Yin Liang sighed and did not say anything. If West Hill City was completely destroyed, the Great Zhou dynasty could gather the dragon vein qi of the world and take the opportunity to expand westward and annex the Great Qin dynasty's territory. But now there was no hope. Although the Great Qin dynasty was weak, the emperor and officials of the Great Zhou dynasty knew that the Great Qin dynasty would lean more towards Xianmin Tianzong. At the moment when the celestial sect of wonders was gradually reaching its peak, the chances of the Great Zhou making a move were slim. Instead, they needed to think about how the Great Zhou dynasty would defend if Xianmin Tianzong stood up for the Great Qin dynasty. Leading the qi of the dragon vein to White Cloud Mountain could be explained by the righteousness of the war between the two realms. However, after White Cloud Mountain was destroyed, Liang Pan used Grand Imperial Palace to direct most of the power of the backlash along the qi of the dragon vein to West Hill City. This was definitely a malicious move. West Hill City was destroyed, and Shi Zongtong and the other experts of the Great Qin dynasty were all killed. Dead people could not testify. But since West Hill City was saved by Shi Tianhao, Shi Zongtong and the others could naturally detect Liang Pan's actions. It was difficult to find evidence for something like this after the fact. However, to the mystic Gate Sky sect, there were many things that didn't matter if they had evidence or not. The mystic Gate Sky sect and the Great Qin Empire had been working together to compress the Great Zhou Empire space. In this war between the two worlds, the Great Zhou dynasty had benefited greatly. They had been hiding their strength and acting cautiously during the war. However, the Great Zhou Emperor, Liang Pan, did not feel relaxed because Xianmen Tianzong's strength had increased greatly. Under these circumstances, after the war between the two worlds ended, the Great Zhou dynasty would be in an even worse situation. Whether it was the bloody massacre of Snowgale, the conflict between Zhu Yi and Zhu Hongwu, or the problems with the Great Qin dynasty in this war, they were all difficult to resolve. The relationship between the Great Zhou dynasty and the Taishu Temple was growing closer. The Great Zhou dynasty and Xianmen Tianzong were already inevitable to oppose each other. The conflict between Xianmen Tianzong and the Taishu Temple would also affect the Great Zhou dynasty. The Great Zhou dynasty had no choice but to rely on the Taishu Temple to hold on. Although the Taishu Temple has suffered great losses this time, its foundation is still there. If Xianmen Tianzong wants to destroy it, they have to worry about the movements of the Yao race. The Great Zhou Emperor Liang Pan knew. This way, their next target in the Divine Land will most likely be me and the Great Zhou dynasty. But I can't back down. Liang Pan looked up at the ceiling of the hall. There was a ball of light there. It did not look dazzling, but it seemed to contain deep principles. It was unfathomable, indescribable, and indescribable. It's a pity that I could not make the king of the underworld stay. Otherwise, I could increase my strength to deal with the upcoming situation. The Great Zhou Emperor Liang Pan thought. The Great Zhou Emperor Liang Fu looked at the ball of light on the ceiling and was shocked. Your Majesty, this seems to be... Liang Pan came back to his senses and looked at him. He said lightly, "That's right. It is Taishu Temple's all-sky Taishu light. It's a pity that it is extremely difficult to understand its profoundness. But it is not a problem to use it for a while." Liang Fu's eyes flashed, and his expression was uncertain. "Is it when your Majesty sent the qi of the dragon vein and the power of the imperial palace to buy Yun Mountain? But your Majesty, They had already offended Xianmen Tianzong, and now they were plotting against Taishu Temple. If Taishu Temple found out, it would be even worse for the Great Zhou dynasty. Although they had obtained the all-sky Taishu light that they had been dreaming of, it was still not worth it. The losses far outweighed the gains. In Liang Fu's impression, Liang Pan was not such an unwise person. He only hoped that Liang Pan would not be blinded by the pressure brought by Xianmen Tianzong. Liang Pan looked at Liang Fu indifferently. "Do you think Taishu Temple does not know?" They knew at that time. This is their tacit consent. But in the current situation, we have gained this, which means that we have to pay a price. It is difficult to hold back. Liang Fu's face showed a look of realization. His uncertain expression calmed down, but what followed was a bitter smile. The Great Zhou dynasty had used such a method in the past, but at that time they were the givers. Now, they were the ones who were forced to take advantage of others. Back then, after the Battle of Yinghai, the Great Zhou dynasty still prioritized providing resources to Eastern Heavenly Gate to repair the Xintian seal. After that, in the battle to destroy Xian, Eastern Heavenly Gate became the Great Zhou dynasty's vanguard and gave their all. There was no free lunch in this world. The same logic applied. But now, the one who gave their all was the Great Zhou dynasty, and they could not reject it. The Great Zhou dynasty needed to seize every opportunity to increase their strength. Liang Fu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Your Majesty, the conflict between our dynasty and Xianmen Tianzong is actually not irreconcilable. The matter of Snowgale is actually easy to deal with. Great Qin can just give up some benefits. It's just that the Grand Preceptor," Liang Pan shook his head. "If that's the case, Hongwu will be completely crippled." Liang Fu was silent. After a while, he said softly, "Even if we rely on Tianjing City, it will not be easy to resist Xianmen Tianzong. What exactly is our dynasty? Liang Pan let out a soft breath and looked into the distance. Silently, he said, Yinghai. Although Xianmen Tianzong controls the Yingzhou Spirit Mountain, it is far from being completely controlled by Xianmen Tianzong. As long as they can control a spirit mountain in the Yinghai, the spirit mountain will disappear without a trace. No matter how sharp Xianmen Tianzong's heaven-punishing sword is, it will not be able to do anything. Chapter 1262. Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou stood in the Grand Imperial Palace. He opened his palm, and there was a talisman in his palm. The talisman was constantly shining. Liang Fu stood beside him and looked at the talisman. After a while, he looked surprised. Your Majesty, this talisman seems to be related to Fangzhong Mountain and Ying Ocean. Liang Pan said silently. That's right. Although we lost Fangzhong Mountain, we have had it for a long time. We have been studying it over the years and have finally gained something. With this talisman, we can find Fangzhong Mountain again. Liang Pan said silently. The master of the Taoist Xianmen shocked Ying Ocean with his sword. Although he did not let the 3 mountains of Ying Ocean reappear, the talisman reacted at that time. This way, we have a chance to find Fangzhong Mountain again. With Fangzhong Mountain, we can hide in it. Unless the entire Ying Ocean is destroyed, Lin Feng will not be able to find us even if he has Yingzhou Mountain. Hearing this, Liang Fu nodded, I understand. To this day, the most regretful thing in the Great Zhou dynasty was that Lin Feng used Mount Penglai to knock down Mount Fangzhong during the Battle of the Yingxi back then. That was the biggest turning point in the development of the Great Zhou dynasty in recent years. It had a far-reaching impact. Not only did they lose the opportunity to occupy Ying Ocean, but they also lost the large amount of resources produced by Fangzhong Mountain. The most important impact was that the Great Zhou dynasty lost their path of retreat and confidence. They lost their strategic depth. Under the management of the Great Zhou dynasty for many years, Tianjin City's defense was extremely strong. With Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu, as well as the Grand Imperial Palace and the Great Celestial Wheel, the 2 creation treasures, they were even stronger than the Mount Shu sword sect after the Battle of Shu Mountain. However, losing Fangzhong Mountain meant that when the opponents stepped on Tianjin City, the Great Zhou dynasty would have no way of retreat. With their backs against the cliff, they could only fight to the death with their opponents. Tianjin City fell. Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu were defeated. The fate of the Great Zhou dynasty was basically decided. Even if Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu could escape and rise again, they would lose their cornerstone. With Fangzhong Mountain as support, the Great Zhou dynasty could retreat to Fangzhong Mountain at the last moment. After the mountain was hidden, it would cover the entire Ying Ocean, making it difficult for others to find it. In recent years, the Great Zhou space has become more and more narrow. Their autonomy has gradually decreased. Under the pressure of the Xianmen Sky sect and the Great Qin dynasty, they are leaning more and more towards the Void Temple. This is directly related to them losing the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain to the point that they are seriously lacking in confidence when facing Lin Feng in Tianjin City. If Fangzhong Mountain had been under the Great Zhou dynasty, they would still have a lot of room and would not be in the current Predic. In these few years, Lin Feng and the Xin Gate Sky sect were able to do things with ease. On one hand, it was because outside of Kunlun Mountain, where the Real Mountain Gate was located, Mount Yujing was hidden in the void. It was difficult for others to find it. On the other hand, it was also because they occupied the Immortal Mountain in the Yingxi. It was also difficult for outsiders to find traces. With these 2 layers of insurance, even when Yujing Mountain revealed itself, Xianmen Tianzong still had a way out. Liang Pan was now planning to revisit the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain. Not only was it out of consideration for the Great Zhou dynasty to increase its strength and regain its hope of rising again, it was also an inevitable choice that he was forced to make. This choice would undoubtedly make Xianmen Tianzong turn his attention to the Great Zhou dynasty. After all, Xianmen Tianzong was the only force that had occupied an immortal mountain in Anghai. Hence, they would naturally pay more attention to this place. At the same time, they would fight for the other immortal mountains so that they would have a greater advantage. Unfortunately, other than this, the Great Zhou dynasty had no other path to take. After West Hill City was secured, if the Great Zhou dynasty wanted to quickly increase their strength, this was the most feasible method. After all, other than Xianmen Tianzong, the revival of Buddhism was not good news for the Great Zhou dynasty. Of course, it was also because of this that the Great Zhou dynasty received further support from the Taishu Temple. This was a tacit understanding between the Taishu Temple and the Great Zhou dynasty. However, this harvest was unable to make Emperor Liang Pan feel relaxed. However, Liang Pan was no ordinary person after all. His heart and will were firm. He shook his head and said to Liang Fu, "Go. After collecting all the resources in this area, we will return to the Divine Land and prepare for the next step." Liang Fu nodded and said, "As you wish." The war between the two worlds had yet to end, but the general situation was set. Under Lin Feng's deterrence, the demon race would not be able to raise any more waves. However, Yudu, the dragon race, the ape race, and the other great demons had also attracted Lin Feng's attention. This was the best time for the Great Zhou dynasty to plan. When the war between the two worlds was completely over, Xianmen Tianzong would be free, and the Great Zhou dynasty would not be able to do anything. Even though he didn't know what the limit of Lin Feng's heaven punishment sword was, there was no doubt that the earlier the Great Zhou dynasty made their move, the better. The longer they delayed, the more time they would give Lin Feng. Since they had made up their minds, the entire Great Zhou dynasty made a prompt decision, and the huge machinery of the country started to operate. After Liang Fu took his leave, Liang Pan stood on the spot silently and pondered for a moment. Then he swiped his palm in the air and light flashed, revealing the appearance of a sealed space. In that space, a middle-aged man wearing embroidered robes and a golden crown was sitting cross-legged. It was the imperial preceptor of the Great Zhou dynasty, Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Hongwu. Zhu Hongwu opened his eyes and looked at Emperor Liang Pan. He bowed and said, "This subject's greeting is inconvenient. May your majesty forgive me." He was at a critical juncture in his cultivation. Liang Pan naturally knew with a glance and waved his hand. "Hongwu, no need to be so polite." Zhu Hongwu said, "The future star glazed Buddha will be born, causing the path of cause and effect between heaven and earth to change in a mysterious way. This subject has been carefully comprehending these days and has already gained some understanding. Only the last barrier is not broken through. Luckily, I did not ruin your majesty's plans." Liang Pan said, "The situation of the war between the two worlds has changed drastically. There is not much time left for you, Hongwu. However, we hope that you can slow down a bit." "Oh." Zhu Hongwu was slightly surprised and looked at Liang Pan in confusion. Liang Pan flicked his finger, and a portion of the Taishu mysterious light that filled the sky above the Grand Imperial Palace fell in front of Zhu Hongwu. Zhu Hongwu's eyes surged with divine light. He instantly recognized this indescribable radiance in front of him. He took a deep breath, and this radiance attached itself to his body. The acupoints all over Zhu Hongwu's body started to vibrate. "Your Majesty, this subject needs some time." Zhu Hongwu pondered for a moment and let out a long breath. He said, "This way, after I fuse with the Tao, my power will exceed my expectations." Liang Pan said, "This is exactly what I hoped for. Although time is tight, Hongwu, you just need to calm down." Zhu Hongwu bowed and replied, "This subject will not disappoint your majesty." The illusion of light and shadow and Zhu Hongwu's figure disappeared at the same time. Liang Pan closed his eyes slightly and stood quietly in the main hall of the Imperial Dowager Palace. After a long time, he opened his eyes again and muttered to himself, "Next, it's the most difficult and crucial moment. As one of the forces in this war between the two worlds, The Great Zhou Empire did not wait for the war to completely end and gradually withdrew from the main battlefield. Other than attacking some medium-class worlds and foreign dimensions outside the lonely chosen realm, the Great Zhou Empire, under the leadership of the Emperor of Zhou, Liang Pan, left infinite wasteland and returned to the capital. At this point, the war between the two worlds gradually came to an end. The top experts of the human race and the demon race gradually turned to a state of confrontation, while the younger generations of both sides continued to fight. However, the intensity of the war was completely different from before. Among them, the outstanding younger disciples of Xianmen, Tianzong, once again shone brightly and attracted the attention of the world. Among them, the most dazzling one was the third disciple of the master of Xianmen, Dao Yuding of Lin Zhu's lineage, Wang Lin of Xianmen's lineage. In a bloody battle, with her cultivation of late-stage yuanying and heavenly laws embodiment, she brazenly killed a demon race great saint of the immortal demon soul realm. In addition, the fifth disciple of the master of Xianmen, Yang Qingji of Nirvana Cave, Zhou Yunsong of Xianmen's lineage, Tang Jun of Funtianya's lineage, Xiao Yin of Xianmen's lineage, Tang Jun of Funtianya's lineage, Luo Qingwu of Xianmen's lineage, Han Yang of Xianmen's lineage. Although their cultivation level was lower than Dao Yuding's, they all achieved brilliant results and amazed the world. The second disciple of the master of Xianmen's lineage, Zhu Yi of Qiantian Palace, Xiaoyan of Xianmen's lineage, Lin Tong of Xianmen's lineage, and the seventh disciple of the master of Xianmen's lineage, Shi Tianhao of Xianmen's lineage, Huang Jinting of Desolate Sky Valley, were all well known. Although Dao Yuding, Tang Jun, and the others had not yet reached the primordial spirit realm, the primordial spirit realm experts of the human cultivation world and the divine land could no longer treat them as yuanying stage cultivators, but had to treat them as equals. And what made everyone's heart even more awe-inspiring was that after Dao Yuding and the others, Li Xingfei, Lu Xiaofeng Zhao Huan, Tan Yinxing, Zhu Guanqiu, and the others followed closely behind. The other younger disciples were also outstanding, and the strength of any one of them was enough to shock the cultivators of the other forces in the divine land. In addition to the second-generation disciples, the third generation of true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong also began to show their extraordinary talents, shining with amazing brilliance. Han Yang's disciple Lianhua Zhao, Li Xingfei's disciple Chen Fengge, Ying Luoza's disciple Meng Honglu, Huang Jinting's disciple Shi Yang. In this war, the geniuses under Xianmen Tianzong emerged one after another, as if forming a monstrous force that was unstoppable. In this war between the two worlds, the human cultivators basically won a complete victory. In terms of the quality and quantity of the demon clan experts killed, compared to the previous wars between the two worlds, it was not very outstanding, but in terms of resources and space, it could be said to be extremely brilliant. With the passage of time, the war between the two worlds finally ended, and the various forces also began to count their own gains and losses. Some people were happy, and some people were sad. However, at this moment, most of the forces in the Divine Land unanimously sent representatives to Yujing Mountain, which had returned to the Kunlun Mountain Range, to request to meet the master of Xianmen, Lin Feng. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.